Welcome to Embers and Pages. I'm so glad you're here. Tonight, we're going to visit Verona, a city of summer heat and ancient stone, where two families have been at war for so long that no one remembers why. And in this city of hatred, something impossible is about to happen. Two young people are going to fall in love. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, thank you for coming back. A gentle reminder, if this story helps you find rest, consider leaving a like, sharing it with someone who needs sleep, or leaving a comment about which classic you'd like to hear next. It helps others discover these quiet stories. You know this story, perhaps, Romeo and Juliet, star-crossed lovers, tragic ending. But tonight, we're not here for the tragedy. We're here for the balcony scenes and the moonlight, for whispered vows and stolen moments, for the beauty of love that burns so bright it lights up the darkness, even if only briefly. This is a story about choosing love when the world tells you to hate, about climbing walls and defying families and believing, just for a moment, that poetry and passion can change everything. And maybe they can. Maybe love that fierce, that true, does change everything, just not always in the ways we expect. Before we begin, let's settle in together. Find your most comfortable position. Let your body sink into whatever's holding you, blanket, pillow, mattress. Close your eyes if that feels right. Let the tension of the day start to drain away, bit by bit. You don't need to stay awake for this whole story. In fact, it's better if you don't. If you drift off halfway through, if you miss entire scenes while you sleep, that's perfect. That's exactly what should happen. This story will still be here tomorrow if you want to know how it ends. But tonight, rest is more important than any ending. Lower the volume until my voice is barely there, just above silence. Let it wash over you like waves, like wind through leaves, like something you don't have to focus on. Your only job is to breathe, to let go, to rest. Our story begins on a hot summer day in Verona, where the sun beats down on ancient cobblestones and old grudges simmer in the heat. Verona. Say the name slowly, let it rest on your tongue. Verona, where the Italian sun burns hot in summer, where ancient stone buildings lean close over narrow streets, where fountains trickle in piazzas, and the air smells of dust and ripening fruit. A beautiful city, yes, but beneath its beauty, something bitter runs deep. Two families live here, both powerful, both proud, both so old they've forgotten their own origins. The Montagues and the Capulets. Ask anyone in Verona how the feud began and they'll shake their heads. Their grandfathers didn't know. Their great-grandfathers couldn't say. An insult, perhaps, a business deal gone wrong, a love affair, some whisper, a murder others claim. But the why has been lost to time, worn away like inscriptions on old gravestones. What remains is only the hatred itself, passed down like an heirloom no one questions. And so the young men of both houses, who never knew the original quarrel, nonetheless grip their sword hilts when they pass each other in the market. The servants spit at each other's shadows. The matriarchs turn their backs at church. And the city holds its breath, waiting for the next explosion. It's a summer morning when it happens. The heat is already climbing, making tempers short and patience thin. In the market square, servants of both houses encounter each other. Words are exchanged, careless, thoughtless words that in any other city would mean nothing. But here, in Verona, words are lit matches dropped on dry kindling. Do you bite your thumb at us, sir? Such a small gesture. Such a stupid, small gesture. But pride is a strange thing. It makes mountains out of dust motes. The servants bristle and shove, hands go to swords, and within moments the square erupts. Montagues and Capulets pour from shops and doorways, drawn by the familiar sound of their ancient enmity. Steel rings against steel. Women scream and pull their children inside. Merchants abandon their stalls. And the beautiful summer morning is torn apart by violence that no one can even justify anymore. Old Montague comes, his hand on his sword despite his age. Old Capulet arrives with equal fury, his joints creaking but his hatred still strong. They would fight too, these old men, if their wives didn't hold them back with desperate hands and desperate words. And then the prince arrives. Prince Escalus comes with soldiers, with the authority of law, with a patience finally exhausted. His voice cuts through the chaos like a blade through water. He is done with this, done with being woken by reports of brawls, done with blood on his city's stones, done with this ancient, senseless hatred that has made Verona a laughingstock and a tragedy. "If ever you disturb our streets again," he declares, his voice carrying across the now silent square, "your lives shall pay the forfeit of the peace." Death then. That's the new law. The next person to break the peace shall die. The crowd disperses slowly, sullenly. Montagues glare at Capulets. Capulets glare at Montagues. But they separate because even pride must bow to the threat of execution. In the emptying square, among the scattered fruit and abandoned wares, young Romeo Montague stands alone. He missed the fight entirely. He was walking in the sycamore grove outside the city, lost in his own misery. And his misery has nothing to do with Capulets. Romeo is 17, dark-haired and handsome, with the kind of face that might launch 1,000 sighs from the young ladies of Verona. But Romeo sees none of them. Romeo sees only one woman, and she does not see him at all. Her name is Rosaline. She is beautiful, distant, and utterly uninterested in Romeo's fevered declarations of love. She has sworn to live chaste, to refuse all suitors, to remain forever untouched. Romeo finds this both devastating and somehow romantic. He wanders the groves at dawn, writing terrible poetry, sighing out her name, convinced his heart will break from unrequited love. His friends worry about him. Benvolio, his cousin, loyal and practical, tries to talk sense into him. "Forget Rosaline," he says. "Look at other women, compare her to others, and you'll see she's not so special." But Romeo shakes his head, dramatic in his misery. "You want me to forget her? You might as well ask me to forget how to see." Benvolio sighs. Love, particularly young love, is immune to reason. Meanwhile, across the city in the Capulet household, other plans are unfolding. Lord Capulet has a daughter, his only living child, the jewel of his household, Juliet. She is 13, or nearly 14, just on the cusp of womanhood by Verona's standards. Beautiful like her mother, with dark eyes and darker hair, a voice like music, and a spirit not yet dimmed by the world's expectations. A nobleman named Paris wishes to marry her. Count Paris, young, handsome, wealthy, kind, well-favored by the prince himself. Any father in Verona would leap at such a match. But Capulet, whatever his other faults, loves his daughter. He hesitates. "Let 2 more summers wither in their pride," he tells Paris. "She's not yet 14. Let her grow a little older. Let her become ready." But Paris is persistent, gentle in his persistence, but persistent nonetheless. And Capulet, seeing perhaps that Paris truly admires Juliet, makes a suggestion. He's holding a feast that very night, the masquerade he holds each summer. A grand affair, with masks and dancing and wine flowing freely. Paris should come. He can see Juliet among other young women, and more importantly, Juliet can see him. "At my poor house, look to behold this night / earth-treading stars that make dark heaven light," Capulet says, his poetry more practiced than Romeo's lovesick verses. "Come, see my daughter shine among other beauties, and if you still want her, we shall talk." In the kitchens and halls of the Capulet house, preparations begin. The servants rush about with flowers and food. The cooks work their magic with spices and roasted meats. Candles are counted and placed. Musicians are hired. Masks are laid out on tables like exotic birds waiting to take flight. And in her chamber, Juliet knows nothing of Paris's intentions. Her nurse, that talkative, affectionate woman who raised her from infancy, chatters about the party, about Juliet's dress, about how beautiful she'll look. Lady Capulet, Juliet's mother, comes to speak to her daughter awkwardly, for this is not a woman comfortable with maternal intimacy. "Tell me, daughter Juliet, how stands your disposition to be married?" she asks, formal even in this private moment. Juliet, honest and young, replies simply, "It is an honor that I dream not of." She's not ready. She hasn't thought about it. Marriage is something distant, something for other girls perhaps, but not yet for her. But her mother speaks of Paris, of his virtues, of his handsomeness, of the match's advantages. The nurse chimes in with enthusiastic agreement, and Juliet, dutiful and gentle, says she will look at him. She will try to like him if her parents wish it, but there's no passion in her words, only compliance. She doesn't know yet that by night's end, compliance will be the furthest thing from her heart. That duty and expectation will crumble like paper in flame. That she's about to meet someone who will make her understand what all the poets meant when they wrote of love. The sun climbs higher over Verona. The heat intensifies. In the Montague house, Romeo still mopes over Rosaline. In the Capulet house, servants hang garlands and test the wine. The day moves forward, ordinary and extraordinary all at once, toward an evening that will change everything. Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona where we lay our scene. Ancient grudges, hot blood, and two children who don't yet know each other's names, moving toward a meeting that will be written about for centuries, that will make their names synonymous with love itself. The stage is set. The players are in position. The sun begins its slow descent toward the west, and evening approaches. Evening with its masks and music, its false faces and true hearts, its moment when two souls will reach for each other across the space between them and find, just for an instant, that the world makes perfect sense. Evening falls over Verona like a silk curtain, soft and purple and full of promise. Inside the Capulet mansion, every candle has been lit. The great hall glows golden, warm, alive with light and movement. Music fills the air, lutes and viols, a rhythmic pulse that makes hearts beat a little faster. Servants move through the crowd with trays of wine and delicate pastries. And everywhere there are masks. Beautiful masks, elaborate masks, masks with feathers and jewels, masks painted in gold and silver. They transform the ordinary into the mysterious, the familiar into the exotic. Behind the masks, eyes glitter. Smiles hide and reveal at once. It's magic, this masquerade, permission to be someone else for one night, to shed the weight of family names and expectations, and simply dance. Lord Capulet moves through his guests, jovial and proud, welcoming everyone with open arms. He's in his element here, playing the generous host, and he's old enough not to care about the small deceptions. He knows some of these masked figures are probably Montagues or their friends. Let them come. Let them eat his food and drink his wine. Tonight, he's declared a private peace. Tonight, there will be no violence under his roof. Juliet appears at the top of the stairs, and a hush ripples through the gathering. She wears white, not the white of a bride, but the white of a girl still on the edge of womanhood. Her mask is simple, delicate, studded with tiny pearls. Her dark hair is partially pinned, partially loose. She looks like something from a dream, something too pure for this world of ancient grudges and political marriages. Paris sees her and can't look away. She's the reason he's here after all. He moves toward her with careful courtesy, bows, asks for a dance. Juliet accepts with practiced grace. They move together through the figures of the dance, and she's polite, pleasant even, but there's nothing in her eyes, no spark, no recognition. Paris is handsome and kind, and Juliet feels absolutely nothing. Outside, in the darkening streets, three young men approach the Capulet house with the recklessness of youth and wine. Romeo, Benvolio, and Mercutio, Montagues and their friends, about to crash a Capulet party, which is either brave or foolish or both at once. Mercutio is the wildest of them, quick-witted and quick-tempered, loyal to Romeo, but exasperated by his friend's melancholy. He's been talking non-stop about a dream he had, spinning it into elaborate fantasy, mocking Romeo's lovesickness, trying to shake him free of his gloom. "If love be rough with you, be rough with love," Mercutio says, laughing. "We burn daylight, Romeo, let's go in and dance." But Romeo hangs back, weighed down by a strange foreboding. "I dreamt a dream tonight," he says quietly, and there's something in his voice that makes even Mercutio pause. "And so did I," Mercutio replies, but lighter now, trying to pull Romeo back from whatever dark place he's sliding toward. "Well, what was yours? That dreamers often lie." It's a joke, a deflection, but Romeo can't shake the feeling. Something in him knows that tonight will matter. That walking through that door will change things in ways he can't predict or control. He touches the mask in his hands, feels the smooth surface, the false face he'll wear. And he tries to name what he's feeling. "I fear," he says finally, too early, for my mind misgives some consequence yet hanging in the stars. Benvolio and Mercutio exchange glances. Romeo's always like this, dramatic, poetic, seeing omens in ordinary things. They pull him forward, laughing, teasing, refusing to let him spiral into dark thoughts. And Romeo, because he's 17 and his friends are with him, lets himself be pulled. They don their masks and slip into the Capulet house, three shadows joining the whirl of light and music. Inside, the party has reached its peak. The dancing is faster now, wilder, fueled by wine and music and the freedom of anonymity. Romeo moves through the crowd like a ghost, still thinking of Rosaline, still wrapped in his beautiful misery. And then he sees her. He doesn't know who she is. doesn't know her name, her family, her history. He knows only that she's dancing, and the light catches her in such a way that everything else fades. The music doesn't stop, the other dancers don't disappear, but somehow Romeo sees only her. White dress, pearl-studded mask, dark hair moving as she turns, grace in every gesture. Something luminous about her, something that makes his breath catch. He forgets Rosaline in an instant. It's as if every poem he's written, every lovesick sigh, every dawn walk in the sycamore grove was practice for this moment. This is what the poets meant, this quickening of the heart, this sense that the world has just rearranged itself around a new center. What lady is that which doth enrich the hand of that knight there? He asks a passing servant, unable to look away from her. The servant shrugs. I know not, sir. Romeo keeps watching. And later he'll remember this moment, this first sight of her, and he'll try to put it into words. Oh, she doth teach the torches to burn bright, he'll say. It seems she hangs upon the cheek of night like a rich jewel in an Ethiop's ear, beauty too rich for use, for earth too dear. It's excessive, this language. Excessive and young and absolutely sincere. Because Romeo, whatever his faults, loves with his whole heart. And his whole heart has just found a new direction. Across the room, Juliet finishes her dance with Paris. She thanks him politely, and he bows and retreats, still hopeful, still planning his courtship. Juliet takes a cup of wine from a passing servant, grateful for a moment alone in the crowd. And then she feels it, that prickle of awareness that means someone is watching her. She turns, and through the sea of masks she sees him. A young man, dark-eyed behind his mask, standing utterly still while everyone around him moves. Looking at her as if she's the only thing in the world worth seeing. Their eyes meet, hold, and something passes between them that neither of them understands but both of them feel. Recognition, though they've never met. Connection instant and inexplicable. The room is loud, but in this moment it feels silent. Everything else is background noise. Romeo begins to move toward her. Not the practiced approach of a courtier, but drawn like iron to a magnet, like a moth to flame. He reaches her side and his hand finds hers. She should pull away. She doesn't know him, but she doesn't pull away. If I profane with my unworthiest hand this holy shrine, Romeo begins, his voice low, meant only for her ears. He's still using the language of poetry, of devotion, but it doesn't sound practiced now. It sounds real. The gentle sin is this. My lips, two blushing pilgrims, ready stand to smooth that rough touch with a tender kiss. He's asking, metaphor layered on metaphor, but beneath it all he's asking, may I kiss you? Juliet's heart is hammering. She should refuse, should laugh it off, should step away. But instead she replies in the same style, matching his sonnet with her own lines. Good pilgrim, you do wrong your hand too much, which mannerly devotion shows in this. For saints have hands that pilgrims' hands do touch, and palm to palm is holy Palmer's kiss. She's telling him, this touch of hands is enough, this is already sacred. But Romeo, emboldened and desperate and absolutely certain, presses on. Have not saints lips and holy Palmers too? I, pilgrim, lips that they must use in prayer. Oh then, dear saint, let lips do what hands do. They pray grant thou, lest faith turn to despair. It's absurd, this elaborate verbal dance. It's beautiful and ridiculous, and charged with more tension than either of them can bear. And Juliet, who has never felt anything like this before, who has been a good daughter and obedient child, and never once stepped beyond the bounds of propriety, makes a choice. Saints do not move, she says quietly, though grant for prayer's sake. She's saying yes. She's telling him, I won't move, but I won't stop you either. And Romeo, reading the permission in her words, in her eyes behind the mask, in the way she hasn't pulled her hand from his, closes the small distance between them and kisses her. It's brief, soft, the first kiss for both of them, though neither will admit their innocence. And it feels like the world tilts on its axis, like something fundamental has shifted and will never shift back. When they part, Juliet is breathless. Romeo is transformed. They stand there, hands still touching, aware of the party swirling around them but utterly absorbed in each other. And Romeo, greedy for more, leans in to kiss her again. This time someone interrupts. The nurse, Juliet's old nursemaid, bustles over with the familiarity of someone who's earned the right to intervene. Madam, your mother craves a word with you. Juliet startles, the spell broken. She pulls away from Romeo, suddenly aware of where she is, what she's doing. She turns to go, then hesitates, looks back. Who is his mother? she asks the nurse under her breath, still not even knowing his name. The nurse glances at Romeo, recognition dawning. Mary Bachelor, her mother is the lady of the house. Capulet, she's a Capulet. Romeo feels the world drop away beneath his feet. This girl he just kissed, this girl who's ignited something in his chest he didn't know was possible, belongs to the family that would kill him on sight if they knew his name. Juliet moves away through the crowd, and Romeo watches her go, already half in love, already half in despair. Benvolio appears at his elbow, urgent. Let's go, now, before someone recognizes us. But Romeo barely hears him, because now Juliet is asking her nurse a question, and he's close enough to hear the answer. His name is Romeo, and a Montague, the only son of your great enemy. Juliet goes pale. Her hand goes to her throat as if she can't breathe. My only love sprung from my only hate, she whispers to herself. Too early seen unknown and known too late. It's impossible. It's cruel. It's the universe playing a terrible joke. Of all the people at this party, of all the boys in Verona, she had to fall for a Montague. For the Montague heir, the son of her family's ancient enemy. But the feeling doesn't go away just because it's inconvenient. The kiss doesn't unhappen just because it's forbidden. They've seen each other now, they've touched, and something has been set in motion that neither of them knows how to stop. As Romeo is pulled away by his friends, as Juliet is drawn back to her mother's side, they both feel it, this terrible, wonderful pulling in their chests. This sense that they've just met the most important person in their lives, and they're already being torn apart. The party continues. Music plays, guests dance and drink and laugh behind their masks, and two children stand on opposite sides of a crowded room, knowing each other's names now, knowing what those names mean: danger, impossibility, forbidden love, and knowing with the certainty that only the very young possess, that names don't matter. Not really, not when the heart has already spoken. The masquerade ends, the guests depart, candles are extinguished one by one, the Capulet house settles into silence, but Romeo doesn't go home. He can't, not yet. Not when she's somewhere behind those walls, his enemy and his love, both at once. The night is warm, fragrant with summer roses and jasmine. Verona sleeps, or pretends to sleep, while Romeo scales the wall of the Capulet orchard like a thief stealing something far more precious than gold. He shouldn't be here, he knows this. If he's caught, he'll be killed. No questions, no mercy, just a Montague's blood spilled on Capulet ground. But the danger feels distant, unreal. What feels real is the knowledge that she's somewhere behind these walls, and he can't bear to leave without seeing her again. He drops down into the orchard, landing softly among fruit trees heavy with unpicked pears and apples. The air is thick and sweet. Above, stars scatter across the sky like diamonds spilled on velvet. And there, ahead of him, is the house, tall and dark except for one window, one small square of golden light shining from an upper room. Romeo moves closer, drawn by that single bright window. And then a door opens above, and she steps out onto the balcony. Juliet. Even from here, even in the darkness, he knows her. The way she moves, the shape of her silhouette against the lighted room behind her. She stands at the railing, looking up at the stars, and she doesn't know he's there. She thinks she's alone. Romeo freezes, watching from the shadows. He should announce himself, should call up to her, let her know she's being observed. But he can't make himself speak, because Juliet is talking to herself, to the stars, to the night itself, and her voice carries down to Romeo like music. "Oh, Romeo, Romeo," she says, and his name in her mouth is the sweetest sound he's ever heard. "Wherefore art thou Romeo?" She's asking why. Why is he Romeo, a Montague, the one name she can't love? Not where are you, but why are you who you are? Deny thy father and refuse thy name, she continues, her voice soft but fierce. Or, if thou wilt not, be but sworn my love, and I'll no longer be a Capulet. Romeo's heart clenches. She's willing to give up her name for him. This girl he kissed once, whose hand he held for moments. She's already thinking of casting aside her family, her identity, everything she's known, for the possibility of loving him. "What's in a name?" Juliet asks the stars, her question aching and honest. "That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So Romeo would, were he not Romeo called, retain that dear perfection which he owes without that title." She's working it through in her mind, trying to make sense of the impossible situation, trying to rationalize what her heart already knows, that names are arbitrary, that the boy she kissed is the boy she wants, regardless of what he's called. Romeo, she says again, and it's half prayer, half plea, doff thy name, and for that name which is no part of thee, take all myself. That's when Romeo steps forward, unable to stay silent anymore. His voice cuts through the darkness, earnest and urgent. I take thee at thy word, call me but love, and I'll be new baptized. Henceforth I never will be Romeo. Juliet gasps, whirls around, peers down into the shadows. What man art thou that thus bescreened in night so stumblest on my counsel? She's startled but not afraid. Not yet. There's something in her voice, hope mixing with surprise. By a name, Romeo says, moving into a patch of moonlight so she can see him, I know not how to tell thee who I am. My name, dear saint, is hateful to myself because it is an enemy to thee. Had I it written, I would tear the word. Juliet recognizes him now. She can see his face in the moonlight, can hear the sincerity in his voice. And instead of calling for help, instead of running inside and bolting the door, she leans forward on the railing, her hands gripping the stone. My ears have not yet drunk 100 words of that tongue's uttering, she says, yet I know the sound. Art thou not Romeo and a Montague? Neither, fair maid, if either thee dislike. He's telling her the truth in his own dramatic way. If she doesn't like those names, then he'll be neither of those things. He'll be simply himself, stripped of family and history, just a boy loving a girl. Juliet looks down at him, this boy standing in her family's orchard, risking his life just to hear her voice. How camest thou hither, tell me, and wherefore? She asks. The orchard walls are high and hard to climb, and the place death, considering who thou art, if any of my kinsmen find thee here. Her voice is practical, concerned. She's thinking of the danger he's in, but Romeo just laughs, soft and reckless. With love's light wings did I o'erperch these walls, he says, for stony limits cannot hold love out. And what love can do, that dares love attempt. He's being absurd and poetic again, but there's truth beneath the poetry. Love has made him brave, or foolish, or both. If they do see thee, they will murder thee, Juliet says bluntly, fear creeping into her voice now. Alack, there lies more peril in thine eye than 20 of their swords, Romeo replies. He means it. The danger of her rejecting him feels greater than the danger of being discovered. Juliet is quiet for a moment. When she speaks again, her voice is different, softer, vulnerable in a way that makes Romeo's breath catch. Thou know'st the mask of night is on my face, she says. Else would a maiden blush bepaint my cheek for that which thou hast heard me speak tonight. She's telling him she's glad it's dark, glad he can't see her blushing. Because she's just confessed her love to thin air and he heard every word. She should be mortified, should deny it, laugh it off, retreat into maidenly propriety. But instead, she does something brave. Something that will echo through time, that will define her as more than just a tragic figure. She chooses honesty. Fain would I dwell on form, she says. Fain deny what I have spoke, but farewell compliment, she's saying. I wish I could play the game, could be coy and proper and make you work for my affection. But I can't, not now, not with you. Dost thou love me? She asks simply, directly. I know thou wilt say aye, and I will take thy word. Yet if thou swear'st, thou mayst prove false. She's trusting him while admitting she knows trust might be foolish. She's asking for honesty while acknowledging that words can be lies. She's young but not naive. And Romeo, standing in the moonlight below her balcony, understands that he's been given a gift, the gift of her truth, and he must match it with his own. Lady, he begins, but she cuts him off. Do not swear at all, she says quickly. Or, if thou wilt, swear by thy gracious self, which is the god of my idolatry, and I'll believe thee. He's about to make elaborate vows, she can tell. Swear by the moon, by the stars, by heaven itself. But Juliet doesn't want that. She wants something simpler and truer, just him, just his word, not dressed up in poetry or cosmic declarations. Romeo starts again, trying to find the right words, but Juliet is faster, her mind racing ahead. Although I joy in thee, she says, I have no joy of this contract tonight. It is too rash, too unadvised, too sudden. She's right, of course. They met hours ago. They've kissed once, spoken in person for barely minutes. This is madness. But then she says, almost to herself, too like the lightning, which doth cease to be ere one can say it lightens. And Romeo hears in those words the same fear he feels, that this moment is too bright, too perfect, too fragile. That it will vanish as quickly as it appeared. Sweet good night, Juliet says, and there's sorrow in it. This bud of love by summer's ripening breath may prove a beauteous flower when next we meet. She's trying to be wise, trying to slow this down, to give them both time to think. The nurse calls from inside, and Juliet turns, torn between duty and desire. 1,000 times good night, she says to Romeo, and retreats inside. Romeo stands in the darkness, bereft, already missing her. But before he can move, before he can make himself climb back over that wall and return to the world outside this orchard, she reappears. "Romeo," she whispers urgently. "My dear, at what o'clock tomorrow shall I send to thee?" His heart leaps. She's not ending this. She wants to see him again, wants to make plans to continue this impossible thing they've started. "By the hour of 9, he says. "I will not fail," she promises. And then, almost shyly, "If thy bent of love be honorable, thy purpose marriage, send me word tomorrow." Marriage. She's already thinking of marriage. They've known each other for hours, and she's ready to bind her life to his forever. It's reckless and young and completely sincere. Romeo can barely speak. "So thrive my soul, 1,000 times good night," Juliet interrupts again, disappearing inside once more. But she comes back, again and again. They can't stop saying goodbye, can't bear to end this conversation, this night, this moment when they're together and the world can't touch them. Finally, Juliet makes herself speak the words that will let him go. Good night," she says, her voice like music even in sorrow. "Parting is such sweet sorrow that I shall say good night till it be morrow." And she goes inside, closing the balcony door behind her, leaving Romeo standing among the fruit trees with his heart hammering and his mind racing. He should leave, but he stands there a while longer, looking up at that window, at the faint light still glowing behind closed curtains. And he makes a decision. Tomorrow. She asked him what his intentions are. She asked if he means marriage. And Romeo, who this morning was moping over a girl who didn't love him back, who thought his heart was broken beyond repair, now knows with absolute certainty what he has to do. He has to marry her, has to bind himself to her in a way that can't be undone, that makes them more than secret lovers stealing moments in the dark. He has to make her his, and himself hers, in the eyes of God if not in the eyes of their families. He turns and runs, not away from the Capulet house, but toward the one person who might help him, Friar Lawrence. The night is still dark, but dawn is coming. And with the dawn, Romeo will ask the impossible. He'll ask a holy man to marry him to a girl whose family would murder him on sight. And somehow, in the gathering light of morning, in the quiet faith of a man who believes love might heal old wounds, Romeo will find the answer he needs. Yes, dawn breaks soft and gray over Verona, the light filtering through the leaves of ancient trees, turning the world silver before gold. In a small stone cell attached to a monastery, Friar Lawrence tends his garden. He's an old man, this friar, but strong still, with gentle hands that know the secrets of plants. He moves among his herbs and flowers, collecting petals and leaves, murmuring to himself about their properties. Here is rosemary for remembrance. Here is rue for grace. Here is poison that can kill, and here is medicine that can save. The same plant, he knows, can hold both death and life, depending on how it's used. He's bending to pluck a particular flower when Romeo appears, breathless from running, wild-eyed and urgent. "Good morrow, father," Romeo says, and the friar straightens, surprised. "Benedicite," the friar replies, blessing him automatically. Then looking closer, "What early tongue so sweet saluteth me? Young son, it argues a distempered head so soon to bid good morrow to thy bed." He's asking, in his roundabout way, what Romeo is doing up at dawn. The boy should be sleeping off whatever youthful revelry occupied his night, but Romeo is not sleeping. Romeo looks like he hasn't even thought about sleep. "I have been feasting with mine enemy," Romeo says, still catching his breath, "where on a sudden one hath wounded me that's by me wounded." The friar frowns, trying to parse this poetry. "Be plain, good son, and homely in thy drift. Riddling confession finds but riddling shrift." Romeo takes a breath, forces himself to speak plainly. "Then plainly know my heart's dear love is set on the fair daughter of rich Capulet. We met, we wooed, we made exchange of vow, and what thou must combine by holy marriage. I'll tell thee as we pass, but this I pray, that thou consent to marry us today." Silence. The friar stares at him, processing this flood of information. Yesterday, Romeo was weeping over Rosaline, declaring no other woman could ever make him happy. And now he's asking to be married to a Capulet. Holy Saint Francis, the friar says faintly, what a change is here. Is Rosaline that thou didst love so dear, so soon forsaken? Romeo waves this away impatiently. I have forgot that name, and that name's woe. The friar's expression shifts between exasperation and affection. Young men's love then lies not truly in their hearts, but in their eyes, he chides gently. You don't really love, he's saying. You just see a pretty face and convince yourself it's fate. But Romeo shakes his head, urgent and sincere. Thou chidst me oft for loving Rosaline, for doting, not for loving, pupil mine. I pray thee, chide me not. She whom I love now doth grace for grace and love for love allow. The other did not so. And that, the friar realizes, is the difference. Rosaline never loved Romeo back, but this girl, this Capulet girl, returns his affection. They're choosing each other. That changes things. The friar is quiet for a long moment, thinking, this is madness, of course. These are children and from warring families no less. But what if? What if this rash young love could be the key to ending the ancient hate? What if, by binding a Montague and a Capulet in holy matrimony, the two families might finally be forced to make peace? It's a gamble. A huge, dangerous gamble. But the friar is old enough to know that sometimes peace requires risk. In one respect I'll thy assistant be, he says slowly. For this alliance may so happy prove to turn your household's rancor to pure love. Romeo's face lights up like the sun breaking through clouds. The friar holds up a warning hand. Come with me and we will make short work. But you must bring this girl, and soon. These violent delights have violent ends, boy. Love moderately. Long love doth so. But Romeo is already planning, already thinking ahead to the moment he'll see Juliet again. Moderately. How can anyone love moderately when the heart is on fire? Meanwhile, across Verona, Juliet paces her chamber. She sent the nurse to find Romeo hours ago, hours that have felt like years. The old woman was supposed to meet him, get his answer, and return by noon. But noon has come and gone, and still no nurse. Juliet stands at the window, watching the street below. Every figure that appears, she thinks, is that her? And every time disappointment. Where is she? What's taking so long? Finally, the nurse appears, trudging up the street, slow and wheezing. Juliet runs to meet her, pulls her inside, desperate for news. Now, good sweet nurse, Juliet begins, but the nurse needs to catch her breath, needs to sit down, needs to complain about her bones aching and her head hurting. What news? Juliet asks, trying to be patient and utterly failing. What says Romeo? But the nurse is in a perverse mood, enjoying her power, drawing out the suspense. She complains about being sent on errands, about how tired she is, about her aching back. I pray thee speak, Juliet pleads. Good nurse, speak. Finally, when Juliet is nearly ready to shake the answer out of her, the nurse relents. Romeo wants marriage. He's waiting at Friar Lawrence's cell. Juliet should go this afternoon, pretend she's going to confession, and there they'll be wed married. Today, Juliet's heart soars. She kisses the nurse's cheek, laughs with pure joy, and begins planning immediately. What will she wear? What will she say? How will she slip away without her parents noticing? The afternoon crawls by with agonizing slowness. But when the time comes, Juliet makes her excuses. She's going to confession, to shrive her soul, perfectly normal for a young lady. And she walks through Verona's streets with her heart pounding against her ribs. Friar Lawrence's cell is cool and dim, smelling of wax and incense, and the herbs hanging in bundles from the rafters. Romeo is already there, pacing, unable to stay still. When Juliet enters, he turns, and the smile that breaks across his face is like sunrise. The friar watches them greet each other, shy and tender and utterly smitten, and he feels both hope and fear. They're so young, so certain, so completely unaware of how hard this will be, how much their love will cost them. Come with me, he says gently, and we will make short work. You shall not stay alone till Holy Church incorporate two in one. And so it happens. In a small stone cell with summer light slanting through a high window, with only an old friar as witness, Romeo Montague and Juliet Capulet speak their vows. They promise to love each other, to honor each other, to keep faith till death parts them. Their voices are steady, surprisingly calm for two people whose hands are shaking as they clasp them together. The friar speaks the familiar words, ancient and weighty. He blesses them, he binds them. And when he says, "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder," Romeo and Juliet, now husband and wife, look at each other with a joy so pure it almost hurts to witness. They're married. Against all odds, against all reason, against the explicit hatred of their families, they're married. The friar sends them out quickly. Go wisely and slowly, he advises. They stumble that run fast, but Romeo and Juliet barely hear him. They walk out into the afternoon sunshine hand in hand, still dazed, still marveling at what they've just done. They part at a corner, reluctantly, Romeo going one direction and Juliet another, but they're connected now in a way that can't be severed by distance or family names. They're bound, promised, united. As Romeo walks back through Verona's streets, he feels invincible. Nothing can touch him now. Nothing can harm this happiness. He's married to Juliet, and Juliet is married to him, and somehow, someway, they'll make everyone understand. They'll make this work. He doesn't know yet how fragile happiness can be, how quickly joy can turn to ash, how fate has already set in motion the events that will test their love beyond anything they can imagine. For now, he's just a boy who loves a girl, walking through summer sunlight, believing in happy endings. For now, that's enough. The afternoon grows hotter still. Verona's stones bake under the relentless sun, radiating heat back into the air until everything shimmers, until the very atmosphere feels thick and oppressive. Dogs retreat to whatever shade they can find. Shopkeepers pull their awnings low and spray water on the cobblestones, watching it evaporate almost before it touches ground. Old women sit in doorways fanning themselves and muttering about the heat making men mad. And they're not wrong. Heat like this does something to tempers, makes patience thin, makes small insults feel large, makes hands drift toward sword hilts over nothing. Benvolio and Mercutio are out in it, walking through the public square because Mercutio is restless, and Benvolio is loyal enough to keep him company even when it's foolish to be abroad in this heat. They're sweating through their shirts, moving slowly, looking for something, anything, to break the monotony of the hot afternoon. Benvolio keeps glancing around nervously. He knows the Capulets are likely to be out. He knows the memory of the prince's decree is fresh. Any more public fighting will be punished by death. And he knows that in weather like this, with tempers already strained, an encounter between Montagues and Capulets could go very badly very quickly. I pray thee, good Mercutio, let's retire, Benvolio says for the third time. The day is hot, the Capulets are abroad, and if we meet we shall not escape a brawl. For now these hot days is the mad blood stirring. It's true. He can feel it himself, the way the heat makes everything more intense, more immediate. The way patience evaporates like water on hot stones. But Mercutio just laughs, that wild laugh that means he's in one of his moods. Thou art like one of those fellows, he says, turning to Benvolio with mock seriousness, that when he enters the confines of a tavern, claps me his sword upon the table and says, God send me no need of thee, and by the operation of the second cup draws him on the drawer when indeed there is no need. He's calling Benvolio a hypocrite, saying that Benvolio himself is quarrelsome, for all his talk of peace and caution. It's not true. Benvolio is genuinely peaceful by nature, but Mercutio is in a strange mood today. Something restless and dark under his usual wit. Maybe it's the heat. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's that being young and alive and full of energy feels like a curse when there's nowhere to put that energy, nothing to fight for, no real purpose except surviving another hot afternoon in Verona. Am I like such a fellow? Benvolio asks, trying to stay light. Come, come, Mercutio says, waving the question away. Thou art as hot a jack in thy mood as any in Italy, and as soon moved to be moody, and as soon moody to be moved. It's teasing, but there's an edge to it. Mercutio is spoiling for something, looking for an outlet, and Benvolio, who knows his friend well, feels a creeping sense of dread. Before he can respond, a group of men rounds the corner, Capulets. 6 or 7 of them, walking with the casual confidence of people who own the streets. And at their head, like a blade looking for a throat, walks Tybalt Capulet. Prince of Cats, Mercutio calls him mockingly. But there's nothing funny about Tybalt right now. He walks like violence barely contained, like a storm about to break. His hand rests casually on his sword hilt, but everything about his posture says he's ready, eager even, to draw it. He's been looking for Romeo, looking since last night, since he recognized a Montague at the Capulet feast. To Tybalt, this is a matter of honor. His uncle's party was crashed. His family was insulted. And the law says he can't duel over insults anymore. But the law also doesn't erase generations of hatred, doesn't make the Montague name any less hateful in his ears. When he sees Mercutio and Benvolio, his eyes narrow. Not Romeo, but close enough. Montague allies, this will do. Gentlemen, good e'en, Tybalt says, his courtesy as sharp as a blade's edge. A word with one of you. Mercutio turns slowly, assessing. He knows who Tybalt is. Knows that Tybalt is dangerous in the way all true believers are dangerous, absolutely certain of his righteousness, absolutely willing to kill for it. And but one word with one of us, Mercutio replies, matching Tybalt's false courtesy with mockery. Couple it with something, make it a word and a blow. He's already reaching for his sword, already escalating. Because Mercutio doesn't back down, ever. It's pride, yes, but it's also something deeper. A kind of furious joy in confrontation, in standing his ground, in refusing to be diminished. Tybalt's smile is cold. You shall find me apt enough to that, sir, if you will give me occasion. Could you not take some occasion without giving? Mercutio shoots back immediately. They're circling each other now, verbally if not physically. The other Capulets and Benvolio shift uneasily. This is how it starts. Always. Words that escalate, pride that won't bend, two men who would rather die than back down. Benvolio steps between them, desperate. We talk here in the public haunt of men, he says urgently. Either withdraw unto some private place or else depart. Here all eyes gaze on us. He's trying to remind them of the stakes, the prince's decree. Death for anyone who disturbs the peace. But both Mercutio and Tybalt ignore him, locked in their own private duel of words and wills. Tybalt's eyes scan the square, looking past Mercutio, looking for the real prize. Where is Romeo? He demands. I saw him last night at your master's. Master, Mercutio interrupts, voice dangerous. My master, I am not a servant. The insult is deliberate. Tybalt knows it. And Mercutio knows Tybalt knows it. But before things can explode entirely, Romeo appears. He's walking slowly, still wrapped in the glow of his secret wedding, still feeling like nothing can touch him. He sees the gathering crowd, sees Mercutio and Benvolio facing off against Tybalt and his companions, and he smiles. Because he knows something they don't. He knows that Tybalt is now his cousin by marriage. Family. The feud for Romeo has just evaporated into irrelevance. Well, peace be with you, sir, Tybalt says with cold satisfaction when he spots Romeo. Here comes my man. Mercutio bristles instantly. My man. As if Romeo is Tybalt's property, his servant, but Romeo, oblivious to the offense, just approaches with open friendliness. Tybalt, he says warmly, the reason that I have to love thee doth much excuse the appurtening rage to such a greeting. It sounds like nonsense to everyone listening. Romeo is saying he has reason to love Tybalt, to love a Capulet, his family's mortal enemy. Mercutio frowns, Benvolio looks confused, and Tybalt hears only mockery. Boy, Tybalt says, the insult deliberate, this shall not excuse the injuries that thou hast done me, therefore turn and draw. Fight me, now, with witnesses, in public, draw your sword and fight me, but Romeo won't, can't. I do protest, he says earnestly, I never injured thee, but love thee better than thou canst devise until thou shalt know the reason of my love. And so, good Capulet, which name I tender as dearly as my own, be satisfied. Good Capulet. He calls Tybalt that, affectionately, as if they're friends, as if the Capulet name is something to be honored rather than spat at. To Tybalt, this is insanity or mockery. To Mercutio, it's worse, it's cowardice. His best friend refusing to fight when challenged, backing down, submitting, bringing dishonor to the Montague name. Oh, calm, dishonorable, vile submission, Mercutio spits at Romeo. His face is flushed with more than heat now, with genuine fury and disappointment. He thought better of Romeo, thought his friend had more spine than this. Then he wheels on Tybalt, hand going to his sword. Tybalt, you rat-catcher, will you walk, rat-catcher? It's a mocking reference to Tybalt's nickname, Prince of Cats, but it's also a deadly insult, delivered with every intention of provoking a duel. Tybalt's hand is already on his sword. What wouldst thou have with me? Good king of cats, Mercutio says, voice dripping with contempt, nothing but one of your 9 lives. That I mean to make bold withal, and as you shall use me hereafter, dry beat the rest of the 8. He's challenging Tybalt to a duel. Officially, publicly, in direct violation of the prince's decree. Romeo sees it happening and feels ice flooding his veins. This can't be happening. Not now. Not on the day he married Juliet. Not when he's supposed to be building bridges, not burning them. "Gentle Mercutio," he says desperately, "put thy rapier up." But Mercutio has already drawn. His blade catches the harsh sunlight, bright and terrible. And Tybalt, who has been waiting for this, who came out today looking for exactly this, draws as well. "Come, sir," Mercutio calls. "You're passado." It's a fencing term, an invitation to the dance of death, and Tybalt accepts. They circle each other in the suddenly silent square. The crowd that had been going about its business now stops, transfixed. Everyone knows what they're seeing. Everyone knows the penalty, but no one can look away. Romeo stands frozen for a moment, his mind racing. The peace he tried so hard to keep, is already broken. Mercutio and Tybalt are going to fight. One of them might die. The prince will execute the survivor. This day that started with such joy, such hope, is turning to nightmare right before his eyes. And he can't tell anyone why it's so terrible. Can't explain that Tybalt is now his kinsman, that he's married to Juliet, that this fight is brothers fighting brothers without even knowing it. His secret marriage, meant to heal the feud, is instead ensuring he can't prevent its latest tragedy. Benvolio grabs Romeo's arm. "Romeo, away. The prince has strictly forbid this bandying in Verona's streets." But Romeo doesn't run. Can't run, these are his people. Mercutio, his best friend. Tybalt, his new cousin by marriage. He has to stop this. Has to. Steel rings against steel as Mercutio and Tybalt begin to fight in earnest. They're both skilled, both deadly. Both absolutely committed to winning, to proving themselves, to defending honor that maybe never needed defending in the first place. The afternoon heat presses down on the square like a physical weight. Sweat runs into eyes. Blades flash in the brutal sunlight. And Romeo stands between his old life and his new one, watching them both try to kill each other, powerless to stop it without revealing the secret that might save them all or damn them further. This is how tragedies build, not from one big decision, but from 1,000 small ones, from pride and heat and ancient grudges, from secrets kept for good reasons, from boys with swords and no better way to prove their worth than spilling blood on hot stones. And the worst part, everyone here thinks they're doing the right thing. Tybalt thinks he's defending his family's honor. Mercutio thinks he's protecting Romeo's reputation. Romeo thinks that keeping his marriage secret will somehow let him reconcile the families on his own terms. Benvolio thinks that staying out of it is the safest course. They're all wrong, but they won't know how wrong until the blood is already spilled. The fight continues. The crowd grows. And somewhere in the Capulet house, Juliet goes about her afternoon, unaware that the peace her marriage was supposed to create is dying in a public square, killed by the very hatreds it was meant to heal. They fight in earnest now, Mercutio and Tybalt, steel singing against steel in the hot afternoon air. The crowd has drawn back, forming a loose circle around the two combatants, everyone knowing they're witnessing something illegal, something that could get them all in trouble just for watching, but unable to look away. Mercutio fights with a kind of wild grace, all quick movements and unexpected angles. He's smiling, actually smiling, as if this is the most fun he's had in weeks. And maybe it is. Maybe this is what he's been waiting for. A chance to prove himself, to channel all that restless energy into something real and immediate and dangerous. Tybalt fights with cold precision. No wasted movement, no showing off. Just the efficient brutality of someone who has trained for this, who knows exactly how to kill a man with a blade and has no moral qualms about doing so when honor demands it. They're evenly matched, these two. And that makes it more dangerous, not less, because neither will back down, neither will yield, and in a duel between equals, someone always dies. Romeo stands at the edge of the circle, frozen between impulse and paralysis. Every instinct screams at him to stop this, but how? He can't reveal his marriage to Juliet. That secret could make everything worse, could be seen as betrayal by both families. But without that explanation, how can he make them understand why this fight is madness? "Gentle Mercutio, put up thy rapier," he calls out desperately. But Mercutio doesn't hear him or doesn't care. He's too far gone in the fight, too caught up in the rhythm of attack and parry and counterattack. Benvolio grabs Romeo's arm again. For God's sake, stop them before the prince's men come, and Romeo makes a choice. Maybe the wrong choice, but he makes it with his whole heart. He pushes forward into the circle, reaches for Mercutio's sword arm, tries to force it down. Hold, Tybalt. Good Mercutio, it happens in the space between heartbeats. Romeo grabs Mercutio's wrist, pulls his sword down. For just an instant, Mercutio's defense is open, his guard dropped. And Tybalt, trained fighter that he is, sees the opening and takes it without hesitation. His blade slides forward under Romeo's outstretched arm, finds the gap in Mercutio's defenses, and sinks into flesh. There's a moment, just a moment, where no one moves, where even the air seems to hold its breath. Then Tybalt pulls his sword back, sees the blood on it, and his face goes white. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. This was supposed to be an honorable duel, both men armed and aware, not a blade slipped in while the man was held. He stumbles backward, and his companions grab him, and they run. All of them, running like the cowards they suddenly feel like, disappearing into Verona's narrow streets before anyone can stop them. Romeo releases Mercutio and steps back, heart pounding. "You're hurt?" he asks, voice cracking. Mercutio looks down at himself. There's blood spreading across his shirt, dark and wet. He touches it almost curiously, as if it belongs to someone else. "Aye," he says, and his voice is strange, not quite as strong as it should be. A scratch, Mary, 'tis enough." He's trying for his usual wit, trying to make light of it, but there's something in his eyes that knows, that understands this is not a scratch at all. "Where is my page?" he calls out. "Go, villain, fetch a surgeon." The page runs, terrified, and Mercutio sags against Benvolio, who's appeared at his side to support him. Romeo stands there, staring at his hands, at Mercutio's blood on them. "Courage, man," he says desperately. "The hurt cannot be much." Mercutio laughs, but it's a bitter sound now, nothing like his usual laughter. "No," he says, "'tis not so deep as a well, nor so wide as a church door, but 'tis enough. 'Twill serve." He's describing his wound with the precision of someone who knows exactly what it means. Not the worst injury imaginable, no, but sufficient to kill him. Romeo feels the world tilting beneath his feet. This can't be happening, not Mercutio. Not because of him, because of his intervention, because he tried to keep peace and instead created disaster. "Ask for me tomorrow," Mercutio says, still trying for humor even as his voice weakens, "and you shall find me a grave man." Grave. A grave, dead. He's laughing at his own pun, at the certainty of his own death, because what else is there to do when the absurdity of life reveals itself so completely? But then the laughter stops, and what's left is just pain and fury. Mercutio looks at Romeo, at Benvolio, at the crowd of Montagues and Capulets who are watching but not helping, not intervening, just standing there like this is entertainment. "A plague," he says, voice strengthening with rage even as his body weakens with blood loss. "Oh, both houses, Montague and Capulet. The ancient families whose feud has created this, who pass down hatred like heirlooms, who care more about dead grudges than living people. They have made worms meat of me," Mercutio continues, each word an accusation. "I have it, and soundly too. Your houses." Romeo reaches for him, but Mercutio waves him off. There's nothing Romeo can do. Nothing anyone can do except watch as the light starts to fade from his friend's eyes. Benvolio helps Mercutio inside a nearby building, trying to get him somewhere safe, somewhere out of the sun. Romeo follows, numb, disbelieving. This morning he got married. This morning he was the happiest he'd ever been. And now his best friend is dying because Romeo tried to prevent violence and only made it worse. A few minutes later, or maybe it's longer, time has stopped meaning anything. Benvolio emerges alone. His face tells Romeo everything before he speaks. "Oh, Romeo, Romeo," Benvolio says, voice breaking. "Brave Mercutio is dead, dead." The word lands like a stone in still water, ripples spreading out in all directions. Romeo stands in the harsh sunlight of a Verona afternoon, and something in him breaks. Or maybe it's more accurate to say something in him hardens, calcifies. The soft hope that love could fix everything, that being kind and gentle and trying to bridge the gap between families would somehow work, that's gone now, burned away. "This day's black fate on more days doth depend," he says quietly, to himself more than anyone else. "This but begins the woe others must end." He's right, this is just the beginning. The tragedy has been set in motion, and it won't stop until it's consumed everything in its path. And then, because fate is cruel, or because Verona is too small, or because some stories have to play out to their bitter end, Tybalt returns. He comes swaggering back into the square, hand on his sword hilt, looking satisfied. The cowardice of running has been replaced by pride at having won. He killed a Montague, defended his family's honor, and the prince's men haven't arrived yet. He's untouchable until he sees Romeo's face. Alive in triumph, Romeo says, his voice cold and flat in a way it's never been before, and Mercutio slain. He's looking at Tybalt, and all that soft, romantic love, all that hope for reconciliation, all the joy of this morning's wedding. It's nothing compared to the rage building in his chest. Away to heaven, respective lenity, Romeo continues, talking to himself, talking to the universe, talking to whatever part of him tried to be gentle. And fire-eyed fury be my conduct now. He's done being gentle, done being kind, done trying to make peace. And when he turns to Tybalt, there's something in his eyes that makes even Tybalt hesitate. Now, Tybalt, take the villain back again that late thou gavest me, Romeo says. For Mercutio's soul is but a little way above our heads, staying for thine to keep him company. Either thou or I or both must go with him. It's a challenge, clear and unmistakable. Fight me to the death. Tybalt, who came back expecting triumph, who thought he'd already won, slowly realizes he's in danger. Real danger. Because the boy in front of him is not the boy who tried to make peace earlier. This is someone else. Someone harder, someone with nothing left to lose. Thou wretched boy, Tybalt says, trying to recapture his earlier confidence, that didst consort with him here shout with him hence. You hung out with Mercutio, so you'll die with Mercutio. It's meant to sound threatening. Instead it just sounds hollow. They draw, both of them. And this time there's no Mercutio to intervene, no Benvolio trying to play peacemaker. Just two young men with swords, driven by hatred and grief, and the crushing weight of expectations neither of them asked for. The fight is brief, brutal. Not the elegant dance that Mercutio and Tybalt performed, but something rower. Something uglier. Romeo fights like a man possessed, driven by grief and guilt and rage all tangled together. Every thrust of his blade is Mercutio's name. Every parry is another memory of his friend's laugh, his wit, his loyalty. Tybalt is skilled, trained, but Romeo is desperate, and desperation makes you dangerous in ways training can't account for. Romeo's blade finds its mark, slides between ribs, finds the heart. Tybalt's eyes go wide with surprise. He drops his sword. His hands go to the wound, as if he could push the blood back in, could undo what's just been done. He falls to his knees, then onto his side, then onto his back, staring up at the sky. And Romeo stands over him, breathing hard, watching the light fade from Tybalt's eyes just as it faded from Mercutio's minutes before. Juliet's cousin, Juliet's kin. The man Romeo called good Capulet this morning when he thought love could conquer hate. Dead by Romeo's hand. The crowd is silent, shocked. Two men dead in one afternoon. The prince's decree broken twice. And Romeo Montague, who this morning was a secret husband trying to unite families, is now a killer who's ensured the feud will burn hotter than ever. Benvolio grabs Romeo, shakes him out of his stupor. Romeo, away, be gone, he hisses urgently. The citizens are up and Tybalt slain. Stand not amazed. The prince will doom thee death if thou art taken. Hence, be gone away. Romeo looks down at Tybalt's body. Looks at his own hands, still gripping the sword, covered now in Tybalt's blood to match Mercutio's. And he understands what he's done. Not just killed a man, though that's terrible enough, but killed any hope for his marriage to be accepted. Killed the bridge he was trying to build, killed the future he imagined. Oh, I am fortune's fool, he whispers. Fortune's fool, fate's plaything, the universe's joke. He tried to do everything right, fell in love, got married, tried to make peace, and at every turn it's gone wrong. Worse than wrong, catastrophically wrong. The sound of guards approaching, drawn by the crowd and the bodies. Benvolio pushes Romeo toward a side street. Go now, and Romeo runs. Drops his sword, leaves it lying next to Tybalt's body, and runs. Through Verona's streets, past shops and houses, past people going about their ordinary days, oblivious to the fact that his life has just shattered into pieces. He doesn't know where he's going, doesn't know what he'll do. All he knows is that this morning he was a husband, and now he's a murderer. This morning he had hope, and now he has nothing but blood on his hands and the memory of Mercutio's last words. A plague-o both your houses, both houses, including Romeo's own, including Juliet's. The families whose hatred created this, whose ancient grudge is now fed with fresh blood, whose pride has cost 2 more young lives and is about to cost so many more. Behind him in the square, people gather around the bodies. Someone sent for the prince. Someone sent for both families. And when they arrive, Montagues and Capulets, standing over their dead children, screaming accusations at each other across corpses still warm, the feud will blaze brighter than ever. And somewhere in the Capulet house, Juliet waits for her husband to come to her tonight, not knowing yet that her cousin is dead, not knowing that her husband killed him, not knowing that the marriage she thought would heal old wounds has instead torn them wider. The sun beats down on Verona, the heat continues, and the tragedy that began with a balcony and moonlight and whispered poetry has now added blood to the mix, ensuring that whatever comes next will be written in sorrow. The prince arrives to chaos, 2 bodies in the square, blood on the stones, Montagues and Capulets screaming at each other, hands on sword hilts, barely restrained from adding more corpses to the afternoon's tally. The crowd that witnessed everything now tells a dozen different versions of the story, each colored by family loyalty and personal fear of being implicated. Prince Escalus stands over Tybalt's body, his face carved from stone. This is his kinsman too. Mercutio was related to the prince, was under his protection. And now Mercutio lies dead alongside a Capulet, and the peace the prince tried so hard to enforce has been shattered beyond repair. Where are the vile beginners of this fray? He demands, and his voice cuts through the chaos like a blade. Lady Capulet pushes forward, her face twisted with grief and rage. She's just lost her nephew, her sister's son, the boy she helped raise. Tybalt, my cousin, she cries. "O prince, O husband, oh the blood is spilled of my dear kinsman." She whirls on the Montagues, accusatory. "Prince, as thou art true, for blood of ours shed blood of Montague." She's demanding Romeo's death, calling for the law to execute him, for the prince to honor his own decree, death to anyone who disturbs the peace. But Benvolio steps forward, trying to bring truth to the madness. He explains what happened, how Tybalt sought Romeo, how Mercutio defended him, how Romeo tried to stop the fight and accidentally caused Mercutio's death, how Romeo then fought Tybalt in vengeance. Lady Capulet doesn't want to hear it. "He is a kinsman to the Montague," she shouts, pointing at Benvolio. "Affection makes him false. He speaks not true." She thinks Benvolio is lying to protect Romeo. And maybe he is, a little softening the angles, making Romeo's intervention seem more noble than desperate, framing the final fight as justified rather than murdered. But the core truth is there. Mercutio died because Romeo tried to stop a fight, and Tybalt died because Romeo couldn't contain his grief and rage afterward. Lord Montague confirms that Romeo tried to make peace. Even he doesn't fully understand why, doesn't know about the secret marriage that made Tybalt family. But he knows his son well enough to know that Romeo isn't naturally violent, that something terrible must have happened to drive him to kill. The prince listens to all of it, the accusations, the defenses, the grief and rage from both sides. And when everyone finally falls silent, waiting for his judgment, he speaks with a weariness that comes from watching the same tragedy play out generation after generation. "And for that offense," he says, his voice heavy, "immediately we do exile him hence." Exile, banishment. Romeo must leave Verona and never return. It's mercy of a sort. The law demands death for anyone who breaks the peace. But the prince commutes it to exile, perhaps because Romeo was provoked, perhaps because Tybalt started it, perhaps because the prince is tired of watching young men die over old grudges. But it doesn't feel like mercy to anyone present. The Capulets cry out for justice, for blood. The Montagues bow their heads, knowing their son must flee. And somewhere in the confusion of Verona's streets, Romeo runs without knowing yet what sentence has been pronounced, knowing only that he's killed Juliet's cousin and destroyed any chance of their love being accepted. In the Capulet house, Juliet waits in her chamber, unaware. She's been thinking about tonight, about Romeo coming to her window as he promised, about their first full night together as husband and wife. She's been imagining how she'll greet him, what she'll say, how it will feel to sleep in his arms and wake to find him still there in the morning light. And then the nurse bursts in, weeping. Juliet's heart stops. Something's wrong. Terribly wrong, the nurse is incoherent with grief, wringing her hands, crying so hard she can barely speak. What news? Juliet asks, terror creeping into her voice. Why dost thou wring thy hands? Ah, Weraday, the nurse wails. He's dead, he's dead, he's dead. We are undone, lady, we are undone. Alack the day, he's gone, he's killed, he's dead. Dead, someone is dead. Juliet's mind races through possibilities, each worse than the last. Can heaven be so envious? She whispers. Romeo can, the nurse says through her tears. Heaven cannot. And Juliet's world tilts. Romeo, her Romeo, dead. The husband she married this morning is dead this afternoon. Her heart, just learning how to love, must now learn how to grieve. But then the nurse keeps talking, keeps weeping, and slowly Juliet understands. Romeo isn't dead. Tybalt is dead, and Romeo killed him. The emotions that crash through Juliet are impossible to reconcile. Grief for Tybalt, her cousin, her childhood playmate, the boy who taught her how to climb trees and who always looked at her with that mix of fondness and protective fury. Horror that Romeo, her gentle Romeo, has killed someone. Confusion about how this could have happened. And underneath it all, a terrible selfish relief that Romeo is alive, even if Tybalt isn't. "O serpent heart hid with a flurring face," she cries, her mind trying to make sense of the contradiction. How could Romeo, who spoke such beautiful poetry, who kissed her so tenderly, be capable of murder? The nurse agrees readily, calls Romeo a villain, says terrible things about him. And instantly Juliet's grief transforms into defensive fury. "Blistered be thy tongue for such a wish," she snaps at the nurse. No one can speak ill of Romeo, not even when he's just killed her cousin, because Juliet understands something the nurse doesn't, something that makes all the difference. Tybalt would have killed Romeo if Romeo hadn't killed him first. In Verona, in this city of ancient grudges and quick swords, someone always dies. And if she has to choose between mourning her cousin or mourning her husband, she chooses her husband. "Shall I speak ill of him that is my husband?" she asks the nurse, her voice breaking. "My husband lives, that Tybalt would have slain, and Tybalt's dead, that would have slain my husband." All this is comfort. She's trying to comfort herself, trying to find the silver lining, trying to convince herself that Romeo alive is worth Tybalt dead. And maybe it is, maybe it has to be. But then the nurse delivers the final blow. Romeo is banished. And somehow that word is worse than death. Because if Romeo were dead, Juliet could mourn him, could grieve and eventually, perhaps, heal. But Romeo alive and banished. Romeo existing somewhere in the world but forbidden from being with her. That's torture that will never end. Romeo is banished, Juliet repeats, the word strange and heavy in her mouth. There is no end, no limit, measure bound in that word's death. No words can that woe sound. She's right. Banishment means her marriage is over before it began. Means she'll never wake up beside Romeo, never grow old with him, never have the life they planned in those brief stolen moments. It means she's trapped in her family's house, expected to mourn Tybalt and eventually marry someone else, while Romeo lives in exile grieving for what they lost. She collapses in tears, and the nurse, seeing her anguish, makes a decision. "I'll find Romeo to comfort you," she promises. She knows where he is with Friar Lawrence, the only adult who knows about their marriage. She'll go there, tell Romeo how distraught Juliet is, and somehow, get him to come to Juliet tonight. It's dangerous, reckless. If Romeo is caught in Verona after being exiled, he'll be executed immediately. But looking at Juliet's tear-stained face, the nurse doesn't care about danger. Meanwhile, in Friar Lawrence's cell, Romeo has indeed sought sanctuary. He arrived breathless and wild-eyed, still covered in Tybalt's blood, and collapsed on the stone floor when the friar told him the prince's sentence. "Banishment," Romeo says, and the word sounds like poison in his mouth. "Be merciful, say death, for exile hath more terror in his look than death." The friar tries to reason with him. "The world is broad and wide," he says gently. But Romeo shakes his head violently. "There is no world without Verona walls," he insists, "but purgatory, torture, hell itself. Hence banished is banished from the world, and world's exile is death." He means it. To Romeo, Verona is Juliet, and Juliet is the world. Being banished from Verona means being separated from Juliet, which is a death sentence of a different kind, slower, crueler, without the mercy of oblivion. The friar's patience frays. "Thou fond mad man," he chides, "hear me a little speak. I thought thy disposition better tempered, but Romeo can't hear wisdom. Can't hear anything except the roaring in his own head that says he's lost everything, ruined everything, destroyed the one perfect thing he ever had. When the nurse arrives and tells him how Juliet is weeping, Romeo completely unravels. He grabs a dagger, fully intending to kill himself right there. If Juliet is suffering because of him, if his name brings her pain instead of joy, then what's the point of living? The friar snatches the dagger away. Hold thy desperate hand, he commands. Art thou a man? Thy tears are womanish, thy wild acts denote the unreasonable fury of a beast. It's harsh, meant to shock Romeo out of his spiral. And it works a little. Romeo looks up, listens as the friar outlines a plan. Tonight, Romeo will go to Juliet, one night together before he leaves. Then he'll flee to Mantua, a city outside the prince's jurisdiction. While Romeo is there, the friar will work on reconciling the families, on getting the prince to pardon Romeo, on making it possible for them to return and live openly as husband and wife. It's a fragile plan, dependent on many things going right, but it's hope, and hope right now is all Romeo has. So that night, when Verona sleeps and the stars come out, Romeo climbs to Juliet's balcony for what might be the last time. She's waiting for him, her eyes red from crying, and when she sees him, the relief and grief on her face nearly breaks him. They don't speak of Tybalt, don't speak of the death or the exile or the impossible future stretching before them. They simply exist together, memorizing each other, holding tight to these fleeting hours. They make love for the first time, hesitant and tender and desperate. They whisper promises they might not be able to keep. They pretend for these few hours that tomorrow won't come, but dawn always comes. The sky begins to lighten, turning from black to gray to the pale blue of early morning. And in Juliet's chamber in her bed, they both know what it means. Romeo must leave. Now, before the household wakes, before anyone discovers him. They stand at the window, and saying goodbye feels impossible. Juliet tries to deny the dawn. Wilt thou be gone? It is not yet near day. It was the nightingale and not the lark. She's claiming the bird singing outside is the nightingale, which sings at night, not the lark, which heralds morning. She's trying to hold back time itself through sheer force of will. Romeo, because he loves her, agrees. Let me be taken, let me be put to death. I am content, so thou wilt have it so. He means it. He'll stay and die if she asks him to, but Juliet can't ask that. It is. Hie hence, be gone away. It is the lark that sings so out of tune. Oh, now be gone. More light and light it grows. More light and light, Romeo echoes sadly. More dark and dark our woes. He kisses her one last time, climbs out the window, and descends to the orchard below. Juliet leans out, watching him go, and is struck by a terrible premonition. "O God, I have an ill-divining soul," she calls down. "Methinks I see thee, now thou art so low, as one dead in the bottom of a tomb." Romeo, trying to stay brave, trying to leave her with hope. "And trust me, love, in my eyes so do you. Dry sorrow drinks our blood. Adieu." And he's gone, running through Verona's waking streets toward exile, toward Mantua, toward an uncertain future without Juliet. Juliet watches until she can't see him anymore, then turns back to face her room, her family, the life that's about to demand more from her than she knows how to give. Because when Lady Capulet comes to check on her daughter that morning, expecting to find her grieving for Tybalt, she instead finds her useful tool for advancing the family's interests. And Lady Capulet has news. Lord Capulet, in his grief over Tybalt's death, has decided Juliet needs joy, needs something to look forward to, and Count Paris has been so patient, so understanding. They'll marry Juliet to Paris, quickly, on Thursday. 3 days from now. When Juliet refuses, her father's rage is terrible. He calls her disobedient, threatens to disown her, says she'll marry Paris or be cast out into the streets. And Juliet, who has already given her vows to Romeo, who spent last night in her husband's arms, can only say that she won't do it. She can't say why, can't explain, can only refuse and face her father's wrath. Even the nurse who knows about Romeo advises her to forget him, to marry Paris and make the best of it. Romeo is banished, the nurse says practically. Paris is here, accept reality, and Juliet realizes she's utterly alone. Alone except for Friar Lawrence, who married them, who promised to help. So she leaves the house on the pretense of going to confession, and she goes to the friar with one clear thought. She will not marry Paris. She will not betray Romeo. even if it kills her. Juliet walks through Verona's morning streets with the steady steps of someone who has made a decision. Her face is pale but composed, and there's steel in her spine that wasn't there yesterday. Yesterday, she was a girl being pushed around by circumstances. Today, she's a woman who knows what she wants and what she's willing to do to get it. She arrives at Friar Lawrence's cell to find Count Paris already there, making arrangements for the wedding. Of course he is. Her father probably sent word immediately after forcing her consent, or what he interpreted as consent from her terrified silence. Paris greets her with gentle courtesy, calls her my lady and my wife, speaks tenderly about their coming marriage. And Juliet must stand there and respond with careful ambiguity, saying things that sound like agreement but commit to nothing. "Do not deny that you love him," Paris says, smiling. "I will confess to you that I love him," Juliet replies, and Paris doesn't catch that him could mean Romeo, not Paris. When Paris finally leaves, satisfied with his arrangements, Juliet drops the pretense entirely. She turns to Friar Lawrence with desperate eyes. "Oh, shut the door, and when thou hast done so, come weep with me," she pleads. Past hope, past cure, past help. The friar sees immediately how serious this is. "O Juliet, I already know thy grief. It strains me past the compass of my wits. I hear thou must, and nothing may prorogue it, on Thursday next be married to this county. Tell me not, friar, that thou hearest of this," Juliet says, her voice sharp with desperation, "unless thou tell me how I may prevent it." She pulls out a knife from her dress. "If in thy wisdom thou canst give no help, do thou but call my resolution wise, and with this knife I'll help it presently." She means it. The friar can see it in her eyes, in the set of her jaw, in the way her hand grips the knife. She'll kill herself before she marries Paris, before she betrays Romeo, before she lives a lie. "Hold, daughter," the friar says quickly, his mind already racing through possibilities. He's old, has lived through many crises, knows that desperate times require radical solutions. "I do spy a kind of hope, which craves as desperate an execution as that is desperate which we would prevent." He's asking, "If you're brave enough to die, are you brave enough to seem dead?" Juliet leans forward, listening intently. "Oh, bid me leap, rather than marry Paris, from off the battlements of any tower," she says. "Or walk in thievish ways, or bid me lurk where serpents are. Chain me with roaring bears, or shut me nightly in a charnel house, or covered quite with dead men's rattling bones." She's listing horrors, impossibilities, anything, all preferable to marrying Paris while Romeo lives. "And I will do it without fear or doubt," she continues, her voice fierce, "to live an unstained wife to my sweet love." The friar nods, satisfied that she has the courage for what he's about to propose. From within his robes, he pulls out a small vial. The liquid inside is clear, innocuous looking, but the friar knows its properties intimately. He explains his plan carefully. "Tomorrow night, the night before the wedding, Juliet will drink this potion. It will make her appear completely dead. No pulse, no breath, cold skin, the appearance of a corpse. She'll be taken to the family tomb, sealed in with her ancestors. But it's not real death, it's a sleeping potion. 42 hours after she drinks it, she'll wake as if from normal sleep. And when she wakes, Romeo will be there. The friar will send him a letter explaining everything, and Romeo will come to the tomb, take Juliet away, and they can live together in Mantua until the families reconcile. It's a desperate plan, dangerous, requires perfect timing and perfect courage, but it's the only way Juliet can escape the forced marriage without betraying her vows to Romeo." Juliet listens to every detail. The friar is careful, methodical. She must go home and pretend to agree to the wedding. Tomorrow night, alone in her room, she'll drink the potion. Wednesday morning, they'll find her dead. The wedding will become a funeral. Wednesday night, Romeo will come for her. "Take thou this vial," the friar says, pressing it into her hands, "and this distilling liquor drink thou off." Juliet takes it with shaking hands but unwavering resolve. Give me, give me. Oh, tell not me of fear." She's not afraid. Not of fake death, not of waking in a tomb, not of any of it. She's only afraid of losing Romeo, of being forced into a marriage that would betray everything she believes in. The friar watches her go, his heart heavy with worry. So much could go wrong. The letter could fail to reach Romeo. The timing could be off. Juliet could wake too early, alone in that dark tomb surrounded by corpses. The potion itself could be miscalculated, but he set the plan in motion. Now all he can do is pray that God guides them through this desperate gamble. Juliet returns home with the vial hidden in her sleeve. Her face is carefully arranged to suggest defeated compliance, a girl who has accepted her fate. And when her mother asks how confession went, Juliet lies smoothly. I met the youthful lord at Lawrence cell and gave him what becomed love I might, not stepping o'er the bounds of modesty, she says. Lady Capulet is pleased. Her daughter is being reasonable at last. When Juliet finds her father, she kneels before him in a posture of complete submission. Where I have learned me to repent the sin of disobedient opposition to you and your behests, she says, her voice humble. I am enjoined by holy Lawrence to fall prostrate here and beg your pardon. Pardon, I beseech you. Henceforth I am ever ruled by you. Lord Capulet's face transforms with joy and relief. His daughter, obedient again. The natural order restored, his gamble worked, forcing her hand made her see reason. Send for the county, he cries to the servants. Go tell him of this. I'll have this knot knit up tomorrow morning, tomorrow. He's moved the wedding up a day, from Thursday to Wednesday. Eager to secure this alliance before Juliet changes her mind again. Eager to bring some happiness into a house darkened by Tybalt's death. Which means Juliet has even less time than she thought. Must drink the potion tonight instead of tomorrow night. But she doesn't argue, doesn't protest. Just nods and smiles and thanks him. The household erupts into frantic activity. A wedding in one day. Servants rush about with flowers and linens. Musicians are hired. Food is prepared. Lord Capulet throws himself into the preparations with manic energy, as if a grand celebration can somehow erase the grief of the last few days. That evening, Lady Capulet and the nurse come to Juliet's room to help her choose what to wear tomorrow. They bring dresses, jewelry, talk excitedly about how beautiful she'll look, how happy she'll be. Juliet lets them fuss over her for a while, playing the role of nervous but willing bride. Then she claims she needs time alone, to pray, to prepare herself spiritually for the sacrament of marriage. They leave her still chattering about the ceremony, about Paris, about the life Juliet will have as a countess. And Juliet bolts the door behind them. Silence. Finally, silence. She's alone now. Just her, the vial, and the terrifying decision she's about to make. She sets the vial on her table and stares at it. Such a small thing, clear liquid in a tiny bottle. It looks harmless, innocent. But what it represents, what she's about to do, is enormous. The fears come then, crowding her mind like ravens. What if the friar is wrong about the potion? What if it's not just sleeping medicine but actual poison, and he's trying to kill her to hide his role in her secret marriage? What if she wakes too early, trapped in the tomb, unable to escape, and goes mad surrounded by rotting corpses in the dark? What if she wakes and Romeo isn't there? What if the letter doesn't reach him? What if he doesn't come, and she's discovered alive in the tomb, and everyone knows she faked her death, and she's brought even more shame to her family? What if Tybalt's corpse is in there, recently dead, and his ghost is angry that his killer's wife will share his resting place? Each fear is examined, acknowledged, set aside. Because the alternative, marrying Paris tomorrow, betraying Romeo, living a lie for the rest of her life, is worse than any of these terrifying possibilities. She thinks of Romeo. His hands in hers, his voice speaking poetry. The way he looked at her like she was the only person in the world who mattered. The promises they made in Friar Lawrence's cell. She will not betray those promises. She will not give herself to another man when she's already given herself, body and soul, to Romeo. She reaches for the vial. Her hands are shaking, but her resolve is steady. Romeo, 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 she says aloud, speaking his name like a prayer, like a talisman against fear. Here's drink, I drink to thee. She uncorks the vial. The liquid inside has a bitter medicinal smell that makes her hesitate for just a moment. This is it. Once she drinks, there's no going back. She'll either wake in Romeo's arms or she'll die. Either her trust in the friar will be vindicated or it will kill her. She raises the vial to her lips. Images flash through her mind. The balcony scene, moonlight on Romeo's face, the secret wedding, their night together, his whispered promises as dawn broke, the way he looked at her with such desperate love. For him, for their marriage, for the vows that cannot be unmade. She tips the vial back and drinks. The potion tastes terrible, bitter and cold and burning all at once, sliding down her throat like liquid fear. Juliet gasps as she swallows it, drops the empty vial, and immediately feels something changing inside her. It starts in her chest, a coldness spreading outward through her veins like frost crawling across glass. Her heartbeat slows, each thump growing fainter, further apart. Her breathing becomes shallow, labored, as if she's forgotten how to pull air into her lungs. She staggers to her bed, her legs suddenly weak. The room begins to dim at the edges, shadows creeping in from the corners. She lies down, arranging herself carefully, and her last conscious thought is of Romeo. Romeo finding her. Romeo taking her away. Romeo holding her as she wakes. And then the darkness takes her completely. Juliet falls into a sleep deeper than any she's ever known. Not the gentle drift of normal slumber, but something profound and absolute. A mimicry of death so perfect that no one looking at her would doubt she's gone. Her heart beats only once or twice a minute, so faint it can't be detected. Her breath is imperceptible, the barest whisper of air. Her skin grows cold and pale, all color draining from her lips and cheeks. Her limbs stiffen slightly, her eyes close and don't flutter. She lies perfectly still, looking for all the world like a beautiful corpse. The hours pass. Outside her window, the stars wheel overhead. The household settles into sleep, everyone exhausted from wedding preparations, everyone looking forward to the joyous ceremony tomorrow. Everyone except Juliet, who lies in a death that is not death, trapped in her own body, waiting. Morning comes far too quickly. The household wakes early, it's the wedding day. There's so much still to do, so many last-minute preparations. The musicians arrive. The flowers are arranged. The wedding feast is laid out. Everything is ready for Juliet to become Count Paris's wife. The nurse climbs the stairs to wake the bride, grumbling good-naturedly about lazy girls who sleep late on their wedding day. She's actually in a good mood. Despite her advice to Juliet to forget Romeo, she's pleased to see the girl settling down with a proper husband. Count Paris is a good match. This marriage will secure Juliet's future. She opens the door to Juliet's chamber, calling out cheerfully, "Mistress, what mistress, Juliet? Why lamb, why lady, fie you slugabed? Why love, I say, madam, sweetheart? Why bride?" No answer. The nurse walks closer, still chattering. "What, not a word? You take your pennyworths now. Sleep for a week, for the next night I warrant, the county Paris hath set up his rest that you shall rest but little." She's making ribald jokes about the wedding night, expecting Juliet to blush and protest. But Juliet doesn't move, doesn't respond. The nurse reaches out to shake her shoulder. "God forgive me, Mary and Amen, how sound is she asleep?" Her hand touches cold flesh. For a moment, the nurse doesn't understand. She shakes Juliet harder. "I must needs wake you. Lady, lady, lady." No response, no breath, no movement. And that coldness, understanding, crashes over the nurse like a wave. Horror, absolute world-ending horror, she screams. It's a sound that brings everyone running. Servants, family, guests who arrived early for the ceremony. They crowd into Juliet's chamber and see the nightmare before them. Juliet lies on her bed, dressed in her wedding clothes that she put on the night before. She's perfectly arranged, perfectly still, perfectly dead. Her skin is white as marble, her lips have no color, no breath moves her chest. When they touch her, shake her, call her name desperately, nothing, no response. No sign of life whatsoever. She's dead, deceased, she's dead. The nurse wails, collapsing beside the bed. "Alack the day, she's dead, she's dead, she's dead." Lady Capulet rushes in, still in her nightgown, and sees her daughter lying cold and still. "My child, my only life," she cries, falling to her knees. "Revive, look up, or I will die with thee. Help, help, call help." But no amount of calling will help. Juliet is beyond help, beyond reach, beyond the world of the living. Lord Capulet enters, moving slowly as if walking through deep water. He looks at his daughter, his only child, his precious girl, and cannot process what he's seeing. Yesterday she was agreeing to marry, smiling at him, being obedient. And now, death lies on her like an untimely frost upon the sweetest flower of all the field, he whispers. Count Paris arrives, dressed in his wedding finery, expecting to see his bride. Instead, he finds her corpse. The girl he was supposed to marry this morning is dead, gone. He'll never know her, never speak with her, never have the life together they were planning. Beguiled, divorced, B-E-R-E-A-V-E-D Arabiclam Arabicalif Maksura slain, he cries. Most detestable death by the beguiled, by cruel, cruel the quite overthrown. O love, O life, not life but love in death. Friar Lawrence arrives for the ceremony and finds chaos. He knew this would happen, of course. He gave Juliet the potion, planned this fake death. But seeing everyone's genuine grief, watching them weep over what they believe is Juliet's corpse, his heart aches. They don't know it's temporary. Don't know she'll wake. To them, this is real tragedy. He plays his part, though, offers comfort, speaks platitudes about God's will and heaven's gain, and gently, carefully guides them toward doing what needs to be done. The wedding is cancelled. Mourning clothes replace wedding finery. Musicians who came to play joyful songs instead play funeral dirges. Flowers meant to decorate a celebration now decorate a bier. Every preparation for joy is transformed into preparation for sorrow. They dress Juliet in her white wedding gown, the dress she was supposed to wear to marry Paris, now her burial shroud. They lay her on a bier, cover her with flowers, and carry her through Verona's streets in a funeral procession. People stop to watch, to whisper. The Capulet daughter dead on her wedding day. How tragic, how terrible. Some remember her from the Capulet party. Some knew her as a child. All of them feel the wrongness of it. A girl that young, that beautiful, cut down before her life truly began. They bring her to the ancient Capulet tomb. It's a massive stone structure on the outskirts of the city, old as Verona itself, where generations of Capulets have been laid to rest. The entrance is sealed with heavy stone that must be moved aside to allow entry. Inside, it's cold and dark. Stone walls, stone floor, stone biers where the dead sleep their final sleep. Tybalt's body lies on one bier, recently placed there, not yet fully decayed, and now Juliet will join him. They lay her carefully on a stone bier, arranging her dress, her flowers, her hands folded peacefully on her chest. She looks like she's sleeping, like she might wake at any moment and smile at them. But she doesn't wake, doesn't move, doesn't show any sign of life. Lord Capulet stands at the tomb entrance, looking at his daughter one last time. "O son," he says to Paris, "the night before thy wedding day hath death lain with thy wife. There she lies, flower as she was, deflowered by him. Death is my son-in-law, death is my heir, my daughter he hath wedded." The words hang in the cold air of the tomb, then they seal it, heavy stones sliding into place with a grinding finality. Locking Juliet in darkness with the dead, the family leaves, still weeping. The tomb is silent, and inside Juliet sleeps on. Her 42 hours have barely begun. She'll sleep through this entire day, through the night, through most of tomorrow. And when she wakes, if the friar's plan works, if Romeo gets the letter, if everything goes right, she'll wake to find her husband there, ready to take her away to a new life. But if the plan fails, if the letter doesn't reach Romeo in time, if something goes wrong, she'll wake alone in the dark, surrounded by corpses, sealed in a tomb with no way out. For now, though, she sleeps, unaware of her family's grief, unaware that at this very moment, Friar Lawrence is anxiously waiting for confirmation that his letter reached Romeo in Mantua, unaware that everything depends on timing and luck and a message getting through. The tomb is dark and cold. Old bones surround her, ancestors who died of age, of illness, of violence, of heartbreak. They've been sleeping here for decades, for centuries, and now Juliet sleeps among them, a living girl in a house of death, waiting to be rescued. Above ground, Verona goes about its business. The sun shines, people buy and sell in the marketplace, children play in the streets, life continues, indifferent to the drama unfolding in the Capulet tomb. And in Mantua, Romeo wakes to another day of exile, not knowing yet what news is coming his way. Not knowing that his wife lies in a tomb, that his father-in-law thinks she's dead, that a letter is on its way to him with instructions that will save everything or doom them both. Time passes, the sun crosses the sky, evening comes, night falls over Verona, and Juliet sleeps on, her body mimicking death, her heart barely beating, waiting for the moment when the potion wears off and she can wake to either salvation or nightmare. But the letter doesn't reach Romeo. Friar Lawrence had written it carefully, explaining everything: the forced marriage to Paris, the sleeping potion, the 42 hours of death-like sleep, the need for Romeo to come to the Capulet tomb Wednesday night to collect his very much alive wife. He'd sealed it and given it to Friar John, a fellow Franciscan he trusted completely, with strict instructions to deliver it to Romeo in Mantua immediately. Friar John set out with the best of intentions. He made good time on the road, confident he'd reach Mantua by nightfall. But along the way, he stopped to visit a fellow friar who was tending to the sick in a small town between Verona and Mantua. What Friar John didn't know was that the house had been marked by the plague authorities. Someone inside had fallen ill with the dreaded sickness, and anyone who entered was immediately quarantined to prevent the disease from spreading through the town. So Friar John found himself trapped, locked in a house with the sick and dying, unable to leave, unable to complete his mission. Guards stationed outside to ensure no one escaped. The crucial letter to Romeo, the letter explaining that Juliet's death was faked, sat undelivered in Friar John's robes while the hours ticked away. He tried to explain that he had an urgent message to deliver, but the plague authorities were unmoved. No exceptions. The quarantine must be absolute. People die from the plague every day. One delayed letter couldn't possibly be important enough to risk an outbreak. If only they knew. Days passed. Friar John paced the quarantined house, growing more anxious with each passing hour. The letter burned in his pocket like a living thing. He imagined Juliet waking in the tomb, alone, while Romeo remained ignorant in Mantua. He prayed that somehow the friar's plan would still work, that the timing would somehow align despite this terrible delay. Finally, mercifully, the quarantine was lifted. No one in the house had developed plague symptoms. It had been a false alarm, or perhaps the original patient had recovered. Either way, Friar John was free to go. He rushed back to Verona immediately, the sealed letter still in his hand, full of apologies and dread. He found Friar Lawrence in his cell and delivered the devastating news. "Who bear my letter, then, to Romeo?" Friar Lawrence asks, knowing the answer before Friar John speaks, but hoping desperately to be wrong. "I could not send it. Here it is again," Friar John says miserably, holding out the unopened letter. "Nor get a messenger to bring it thee, so fearful were they of infection." The letter, the crucial letter, still sealed, still unread. Still sitting in Verona while Juliet sleeps in a tomb and Romeo remains ignorant in Mantua. Friar Lawrence goes pale. "Unhappy fortune," he cries, snatching the letter back. His hands shake as he realizes what this means. "By my brotherhood, the letter was not nice but full of charge, of dear import, and the neglecting it may do much danger." May do much danger. That's an understatement. Without this letter, Romeo doesn't know Juliet is alive. Which means when word of her death reaches him, and it will reach him, gossip travels fast, he'll believe she's truly dead. He'll grieve. He might do something desperate, might even know. The friar can't think about that. He has to act. "Friar John, go hence," he commands. "Get me an iron crow and bring it straight unto my cell." A crowbar. He'll need it to break into the tomb, because Juliet will wake soon tonight perhaps, and Romeo won't be there to collect her. The friar will have to go himself, will have to be there when she wakes, will have to hide her in his cell until he can get word to Romeo properly. It's not the plan. It's messy and dangerous and could go wrong in a dozen ways. But it's the best he can do with the disaster unfolding around him. What the friar doesn't know is that he's already too late. Not by hours, but by a much crueler margin. Because in Mantua, Romeo has just received news of Juliet's death, not from the friar, not from anyone who knows the truth, but from his servant Balthazar, who saw Juliet's funeral procession through Verona's streets, who watched them seal her body in the Capulet tomb, who rode hard to Mantua to bring his master the terrible news. Romeo had been having a dream when Balthazar arrived. A strange, vivid dream where Juliet found him dead but kissed him back to life. It should have been a nightmare, but somehow it felt joyful, as if even death couldn't separate them. He woke smiling, feeling hopeful for the first time since his exile. Maybe today would bring good news. Maybe the friar's plan was working. Maybe soon. And then he looked out the window and saw Balthazar riding into the square below, dust-covered and clearly exhausted from urgent travel. Romeo ran down to meet him, expecting, hoping for news that he could return home, that the families had reconciled, that he and Juliet could live openly as husband and wife. "How doth my lady Juliet?" he asked immediately. "That I ask again, for nothing can be ill if she be well." Balthazar's face was grave. He didn't want to say it, but Romeo was waiting, urgent, and there was no kind way to deliver this message. "Then she is well, and nothing can be ill," Balthazar said carefully. "Her body sleeps in Capel's monument, and her immortal part with angels' lives." The words hung in the air between them. Romeo heard them, but for a moment couldn't process them. Her body sleeps, her immortal part. What ho, he said, his voice strange. Juliet is dead, is it even so? Balthazar nodded miserably. Her body sleeps in Capel's monument. I saw her laid low in her kindred's vault, and presently took post to tell it you. Oh, pardon me for bringing these ill news. Dead. Juliet is dead. Romeo stood very still. The world should have stopped. The sun should have gone dark. Something catastrophic should have marked this moment when everything ended. But the world continued. The sun kept shining. People in the square kept going about their business, unaware that Romeo's entire universe had just collapsed. Is it even so? Romeo said quietly. And then, with terrible calm, then I defy you, stars. He was declaring war on fate itself, on the cosmic forces that brought them together only to tear them apart, on a universe that promised love and delivered only sorrow. Get me ink and paper and hire post horses, he told Balthazar, his voice eerily steady. I will hence tonight. He was going back to Verona, tonight. Despite the exile, despite the death sentence waiting for him there, he was going to Juliet. Balthazar looked alarmed. I do beseech you, sir, have patience. Your looks are pale and wild and do import some misadventure. But Romeo didn't hear the concern. He was already planning, already moving forward with grim purpose. Hast thou no letters to me from the friar? He asked. No, my good lord, no letter. The friar hadn't written, which meant there was no secret plan, no hope, no last-minute salvation. Juliet was dead, and Romeo was alone. After Balthazar left to make arrangements, Romeo walked through Mantua's streets with terrible clarity. He knew exactly what he was going to do. It was simple, final, the only thing that made sense. He remembered passing an apothecary shop earlier, a shabby place in a poor quarter, the kind of desperate establishment where a man might, for enough gold, purchase something illegal. Romeo found it, entered. The apothecary looked up, wary and hungry in equal measure. A dram of poison, Romeo said calmly, laying gold coins on the counter. More gold than the apothecary had probably seen in months. Such soon-speeding gear as will disperse itself through all the veins that the life-weary taker may fall dead. The apothecary hesitated. Selling poison was illegal, punishable by death. But the gold glittered on the counter, and he was so very hungry. Such mortal drugs I have, he said weakly, but Mantua's law is death to any he that utters them. Romeo added more gold. The world is not thy friend, nor the world's law. The world affords no law to make thee rich. Then be not poor, but break it and take this. The apothecary's resistance crumbled. He retrieved a tiny vial from a locked cabinet. Put this in any liquid thing you will and drink it off, and if you had the strength of 20 men, it would dispatch you straight. Romeo took the vial, pocketed it. There is thy gold, he said. Worse poison to men's souls, doing more murders in this loathsome world than these poor compounds that thou mayst not sell. He left with death in his pocket and a plan in his heart. He would ride to Verona, go to the Capulet tomb where Juliet lay, and there, beside her, take the poison. They would be together in death if they couldn't be together in life. It was a terrible plan, final and irrevocable. But to Romeo, grieving and exiled, and absolutely convinced that Juliet was dead, it made perfect sense. A world without Juliet was not a world worth living in. He didn't know, had no way of knowing, that even now Juliet slept in that tomb, her 42 hours almost up, her body preparing to wake. That the message explaining everything sat undelivered in Verona. That he was racing toward tragedy that could still, even now, be prevented if only someone could tell him the truth. But no one could. No one knew where he was, what he was planning, what desperate act he was about to commit. The stars that Romeo defied looked down indifferently. They had seen this story before. Young love crushed by circumstance, hope destroyed by timing, brave hearts broken by messages that arrived too late or not at all. Romeo rode toward Verona, toward Juliet, toward the tomb, with poison in his pocket and death in his heart. And in that tomb, Juliet's chest rose and fell almost imperceptibly, her sleeping potion reaching its final hours. Two lovers moving toward the same place, separated only by a failed letter and the cruelest timing in the world. Romeo arrives at the Capulet tomb just as night deepens over Verona. He carries a torch, a crowbar to break the seal, and the poison tucked in his pocket. Behind him, Balthazar follows reluctantly, protesting that this is madness, that Romeo will be killed if he's caught. "Give me that torch," Romeo says, his voice hollow with grief, "and do as I bid thee. Whatever thou hearst or seest, stand all aloof and do not interrupt me." Balthazar hesitates, afraid to leave his master but more afraid to disobey the terrible determination in Romeo's voice. He backs away into the shadows, unwilling to abandon Romeo entirely but unable to stop him. Romeo approaches the tomb's sealed entrance and begins prying at the stone with his crowbar. The physical effort feels good, something concrete to do with his hands, a way to channel the howling grief in his chest into muscle and motion. He's so focused on his task that he doesn't hear the approaching footsteps until it's too late. Count Paris appears carrying flowers. He's come to mourn his would-be bride, to lay tributes at her tomb, to grieve the future they'll never have. When he sees Romeo, the banished Montague, the murderer of Tybalt, breaking into Juliet's tomb, rage and grief combine into terrible certainty. This villain has come to desecrate the tomb, to defile the Capulets even in death. "Stop thy unhallowed toil, vile Montague," Paris calls out, drawing his sword. "Can vengeance be pursued further than death? Condemned villain, I do apprehend thee. Obey and go with me, for thou must die." Romeo looks at Paris with exhausted eyes. He doesn't want this fight, has no quarrel with this man, already has too much blood on his hands. "Good gentle youth, tempt not a desperate man," he warns. "Put not another sin upon my head by urging me to fury. I beseech thee, youth, be gone and leave me." But Paris, convinced he's preventing some terrible crime, won't back down. "I do defy thy conjuration and apprehend thee for a felon here." They fight. Romeo doesn't want to, but Paris gives him no choice. And Paris, despite his courage and training, is facing a man who has nothing left to lose. Desperation makes Romeo dangerous in ways skill cannot match. Romeo's blade finds its mark. Paris staggers, falls, blood spreading dark across the stone. "Oh, I am slain," Paris gasps, and with his dying breath, "If thou be merciful, open the tomb, lay me with Juliet." Romeo kneels beside the fallen count, seeing his face clearly for the first time. "Mercutio's kinsman, noble County Paris," he whispers, recognizing him. "The man who wanted to marry Juliet, who came tonight to mourn her, who died trying to protect her tomb, and Romeo has killed him too. I'll bury thee in a triumphant grave," Romeo promises the dying man. With strength born of grief and guilt, he carries Paris's body into the now open tomb. Inside, the tomb is cold and dark. Romeo sets his torch in a bracket, and its flickering light reveals the space around him. Stone walls. Stone biers, bodies wrapped in shrouds. And there on the newest bier, Juliet. Romeo's breath catches. She lies dressed in white, her hands folded on her chest, looking so perfectly herself that for a moment his heart leaps with impossible hope. But no, she's cold, still, dead, except she doesn't look dead. That's what strikes him most forcefully. Her skin, though pale, isn't the gray of death. Her lips still have a faint flush of color. She looks like she's sleeping, like she might wake at any moment. "Oh, my love, my wife," Romeo whispers, dropping to his knees beside her. "Death, that hath sucked the honey of thy breath, hath had no power yet upon thy beauty. Thou art not conquered. Beauty's ensign yet is crimson in thy lips and in thy cheeks, and death's pale flag is not advanced there." Some part of him knows this is strange. Knows that death should look different, grayer, stiffer, more obviously final. But grief has clouded his judgment. He sees what he expects to see rather than what's truly before him. He takes her hand. It's cold, yes, but not the rigid cold of long death. If only he could think clearly, if only he wasn't drowning in grief, he might question this. Might wonder, might wait, but he doesn't wait. "Ah, dear Juliet, why art thou yet so fair?" he asks the silence. "Shall I believe that unsubstantial death is amorous, and that the lean abhorred monster keeps thee here in dark to be his paramour?" He's asking if death itself has fallen in love with her, wants to keep her beautiful forever. It's a poet's thought, a lover's fancy, and it's so very wrong, because Juliet isn't dead, she's sleeping. The potion is wearing off even now. Her heart beats faintly beneath her folded hands. Her breath, though shallow, moves in and out. She's minutes, perhaps only minutes from waking. But Romeo doesn't know, can't know. All he knows is that his wife lies before him, apparently dead, and he cannot live without her. Here will I remain with worms that are thy chambermaids," he says. "Oh, here will I set up my everlasting rest, and shake the yoke of inauspicious stars from this world-wearied flesh." He pulls out the poison. The tiny vial catches the torchlight like a falling star. He looks at it, then at Juliet, then back at the poison. This is it, his final choice, his last act. He'll drink and the pain will end and he'll be with Juliet, if not in life, then in whatever comes after. Eyes, look your last, he tells himself, drinking in the sight of her. Arms, take your last embrace. He gathers her into his arms one final time, holds her close, memorizes the weight and shape of her even though she's cold, so cold. And lips owe you the doors of breath, seal with a righteous kiss a dateless bargain to engrossing death. He leans down and kisses her, one last kiss. Her lips are soft though cold. And he doesn't know, can't know, that beneath her skin, her heart is beating stronger now, her sleep growing lighter, her body preparing to wake. He uncorks the poison and raises it. Here's to my love, and drinks it down. The effect is immediate and terrible. Fire races through his veins. His heart seizes, pain sharp and absolute, and then the beginning of darkness. He reaches out, finds Juliet's hand with his own. Thus with a kiss I die, and Romeo collapses beside Juliet's bier, dead before he even hits the stone floor. The empty poison vial rolls from his fingers. Silence in the tomb. Romeo lies still, his hand still reaching toward Juliet. Paris lies near the entrance where Romeo laid him, and Juliet sleeps on, unaware that her husband came and found her and died thinking she was dead. Then footsteps. Running, Friar Lawrence arrives, breathless and terrified, carrying a lantern and a crowbar. He's too late, he knows he's too late, but he has to try. He sees the broken seal, the torch burning inside, and his heart, already heavy with dread, turns to stone. He enters and finds carnage. Paris's body, Romeo's body, the empty poison vial, and Juliet still lying peacefully, still appearing to sleep. Romeo, the friar cries, kneeling beside the boy, but there's no response. Romeo's skin is already cooling, his eyes fixed and lifeless. And then Juliet stirs, her eyelids flutter, her chest rises with a deeper breath. The 42 hours are up. The sleeping potion has run its course. She's waking. "Oh, comfortable friar," Juliet says sleepily, her eyes opening slowly. "Where is my lord? I do remember well where I should be, and there I am. Where is my Romeo?" The friar looks at her, this girl waking to nightmare, and his heart breaks. How can he tell her? How can he possibly? "Lady, come from that nest of death, contagion, and unnatural sleep," he says urgently, trying to pull her up. "A greater power than we can contradict hath thwarted our intents. Come, come away. Thy husband in thy bosom there lies dead, and Paris too." Juliet's eyes clear. Focus. She sees Romeo lying on the ground beside her bier, his face peaceful, his hand outstretched toward her. Understanding crashes over her. He came for her, but he didn't know, the letter never reached him. He thought she was dead, and he, "Go get thee hence, for I will not away," she tells the friar, her voice suddenly strong and certain. Outside there are sounds, voices. The watch, alerted by Paris's page, is coming. The friar hears them and panics. "Come, go, good Juliet, I dare no longer stay." But Juliet won't leave, won't abandon Romeo. "Go, get thee hence." And the friar, in the greatest failure of his life, runs, leaves her there alone with the dead. Juliet kneels beside Romeo, really looks at him. His lips are still wet from the poison. His face is still warm, he can't have been dead long. Minutes, she missed him by minutes. "Oh, churl, drunk all and left no friendly drop to help me after," she says bitterly. She picks up the poison vial, but it's empty. Not even a drop left. "I will kiss thy lips," she decides. "Haply some poison yet doth hang on them to make me die with a restorative." She kisses him, their final kiss, desperately hoping for death. But there's not enough poison on his lips to kill her. The watchmen are at the tomb entrance. She can hear them calling, out of time, out of options. Her eyes fall on Romeo's dagger. She pulls it free, tests its weight, and without hesitation, without fear, speaks her last words. "O happy dagger, this is thy sheath," and drives it into her heart. The pain is bright and brief. She falls across Romeo's body, their hands finding each other one final time. And Juliet dies as she lived, brave, faithful, choosing love even when love demands everything. The watchmen burst in and find them, Paris, Romeo, and Juliet, all dead within minutes of each other, their blood mingling on the ancient stones. Word spreads, the prince comes. Both families come, their grief temporarily overwhelming their hatred. Through testimonies from Friar Lawrence, Balthazar, and Paris's page, the truth emerges, all of it, the secret marriage, the sleeping potion. The failed letter, the tragic, terrible timing. The prince looks at the bodies and speaks with cold fury. See what a scourge is laid upon your hate, that heaven finds means to kill your joys with love. Your hate did this, your feud. Your pride, Lord Capulet and Lord Montague stand over their dead children. And finally, too late, far too late, they understand. "O brother Montague," Capulet says, extending his hand. "Give me thy hand." Montague takes it. Two old men, united by shared grief over the children their hatred killed. "For I will raise her statue in pure gold," Montague promises. "That whilst Verona by that name is known, there shall no figure at such rate be set as that of true and faithful Juliet. As rich shall Romeo's by his lady lie," Capulet responds. "Poor sacrifices of our enmity. The feud is over, ended not by wisdom but by tragedy, by the deaths of two children who loved each other more than they feared their family's hatred." The prince's final words echo through the tomb. For never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo. And so our story comes to rest, like a candle burning down to stillness. Romeo and Juliet's journey has shown us both the beauty and the cost of love, how it can make us brave beyond measure, how it can give meaning to our days, and how, when the world conspires against it, it can break our hearts even as it transforms something broken in the world itself. But let us not remember only the sorrow. Let us remember the balcony, moonlit and fragrant with summer roses. Let us remember two young people reaching for each other across impossible distances, family names, ancient feuds, death itself, and finding, just for a moment, that love could bridge even those chasms. Let us remember Juliet's courage. This girl barely 14 who was brave enough to drink poison, brave enough to trust, brave enough to defy her family and choose love even when love asked everything of her. She could have accepted the marriage to Paris, could have lived a comfortable, respectable life, but she chose truth instead of comfort, love instead of safety. Let us remember Romeo's devotion, how he climbed walls and faced exile and died rather than live without his beloved, how he tried, in his flawed and desperate way, to make peace between the families, how he loved completely, without reservation, giving his whole heart. Their love was brief, from first meeting to last breath, less than a week, but it was real. It transformed them both, made them braver, more themselves, more alive than they'd ever been. And in those few days, they loved each other more fully than many people do in lifetimes. What Shakespeare understood, what this story has always known, is that the intensity of love matters more than its duration. That 1 week of truly being seen, truly being loved, truly being yourself with another person, that can be worth more than decades of loneliness or quiet resignation. Romeo and Juliet's tragedy was not their love. Their love was beautiful, pure, exactly what it should have been. The tragedy was the world that couldn't make room for it, the ancient grudge that valued pride over people, the parents too caught up in old hatreds to notice their children's suffering, the timing that went wrong at every crucial moment, the letter that didn't arrive, the potion that wore off minutes too late, the despair that struck minutes too soon. But even in tragedy, there is redemption. The feud ended. Two old men who spent lifetimes hating each other finally clasped hands over their children's bodies and understood, too late, far too late, that no pride, no ancient quarrel, no family honor is worth a single child's life. Verona learned that hate destroys everything it touches. That passing down enmity like inheritance ensures children pay for their parents' choices, that the price of pride is always paid in blood. And Romeo and Juliet in their death got what they couldn't have in life. They're together, united finally, completely, in a way no decree or grudge can separate. If there is mercy in the universe, let them be together somewhere beyond Verona's walls, where they can speak in poetry and walk in moonlight and love each other without fear or time running out. The golden statues will stand in Verona's square for centuries. Visitors will come and ask to hear the story. Teachers will assign the play. Young lovers will quote the balcony scene. And every person who encounters this tale will be reminded. Love matters, it's worth fighting for. And hate, no matter how old or justified it seems, is never worth the price it demands. For you, listening now in the dark, let their story settle into your dreams like snow on old stones. Let it remind you that our time here is brief, all of us living our handful of days before darkness comes. And in that time we can choose. We can choose hate or love, grudges or forgiveness. We can hide our hearts or risk them, speak in poetry or settle for silence, reach for each other or turn away. Romeo and Juliet reached for each other. They risked everything. And for that, for the reaching, for the trying, for the loving as completely as they could, they deserve to be remembered not as victims of fate, but as two people who chose love, who fought for it, who refused to let hatred define them. Their story asks us, what would we risk for love? What would we give up? How brave are we willing to be? In a world that tells us to be practical, to be cautious, to protect ourselves, Romeo and Juliet remind us that sometimes the most practical thing is to love fiercely, to risk greatly, to believe that connection matters more than safety. They also remind us of love's fragility, how it depends on timing and luck and letters arriving on time, how even the best intentions can go wrong, how parents' choices echo through children's lives in unpredictable ways, how a single moment, a quarrel, a delayed message, a misunderstanding can cascade into tragedy. But fragility doesn't mean worthlessness. Roses are fragile, candle flames are fragile, first snow is fragile. We treasure these things precisely because they're temporary, precisely because they won't last forever. Romeo and Juliet's love was like that, brief and bright and beautiful. The fact that it ended in sorrow doesn't diminish the joy it contained. The fact that they died doesn't erase the nights they loved each other, the mornings they woke together, the moments they made each other laugh or held each other close. What they teach us is this: love anyway, even when it's risky, even when families oppose it and the world makes it difficult. Love anyway, because the alternative, a life without connection, without vulnerability, without moments that make your heart race, that's a slower death than any poison. They also teach us about the cost of hatred. Lord Capulet and Lord Montague, standing over their children's bodies, must have wished they could go back. Must have thought, was it worth it? This feud we can't remember starting. This pride that seemed so important. Was it worth our children's lives? The answer is no, it's never worth it. No grudge, no slight, no ancient quarrel justifies the human cost. But we learn this too late, always too late, standing over the bodies of those who paid for our pride. So sleep now and let this story remind you, choose love, choose connection, choose to build bridges instead of walls. Choose to let go of old hatreds before they claim new victims. Choose to speak kindly, to forgive quickly, to reach out rather than pull back. And if you're fortunate enough to find someone who makes you want to climb balconies and speak in poetry and risk everything, hold them close. Tell them what they mean to you. Don't wait for perfect timing, because there is no perfect timing. Don't let pride or fear or other people's opinions keep you from loving as fully as you can. Because we're all Romeo and Juliet in our own way, all living our handful of days, all trying to love in a world that makes it difficult, all hoping that our brief time here will matter, will mean something, will leave some trace that says, I was here, I loved, I was brave. Romeo and Juliet left that trace. Golden statues, a story told across centuries, a reminder that even brief love can be eternal, that even tragic love can teach us. That even when everything goes wrong, love wins, if not in the lovers' lives, then in the world they leave behind. A world where feuds can end, where enemies can become allies, where hate can transform into understanding. For never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo, but never was a love more true, more brave, more worthy of remembrance. Never were two people more willing to risk everything for each other. Never was there stronger testament to love's power to change the world, even at terrible cost. Rest now, dear listener. Let the story settle into dreams. Let Romeo and Juliet fade into peaceful darkness, their hands still clasped, their love still burning bright somewhere beyond sorrow. And tomorrow when you wake, remember what they taught us, that love matters, that brave hearts can change the world, that our brief time here is precious, and that choosing love, risking love, speaking love, being love is always worth it. For in the end, love is all that remains, all that endures, all that matters. Good night, sleep well, and may your dreams be filled with moonlight and poetry and the courage to love as greatly as Romeo and Juliet did. Good night.
Sweet dreams.